country as voters in 3 politically crucial provinces cast their ballots, the 3 provinces that stand to take the biggest hits from Trump's new tariffs.
Look, I know it's been a tough decade. The cost of living is out of control.
It's mean words intended to intimidate.
Make our economy more independent and less vulnerable in this very chaotic and uncertain period.
Tonight, 2 Liberal seats and 1 Conservative riding up for grabs, a test of the government's razor-thin majority and the opposition's popularity in battleground Quebec. The polls are closed, the count has started. It's Canada Votes by-election night. Hey everybody, welcome to by-election night. I'm Rosemary Barton. The count now underway in 2 of the 3 ridings voting today, and we are here with you all night, ready, well hopefully not all night, ready to bring you results and of course the stories behind some of the numbers that we will see through the night. 3 ridings, 3 contests to choose a new MP. Each vote, of course, a test for the political parties, for the leaders at this major moment in this country's history. The first test in Chicoutimi-Le Fjord, that of course in Quebec, where the Conservative MP, Richard Martel, was appointed to the Senate by the Prime Minister after being elected 4 times in a row. It is a 3-way race, very much so, just like the last general election. The field wide open in that by-election. The second by-election tonight we are watching, downtown Toronto, Beaches, East York, where the Liberals hope to repeat their huge victory of the last few elections. And finally, in North Vancouver, Capilano, where the Liberals have won again there with enormous margins in the last 4 elections, used to be the riding of Jonathan Wilkinson. We'll see whether they can hold it and whether the opposition can try and make up some ground to send some signals of life out there. We have reporting teams out in all 3 of those ridings tonight, talking to voters, party insiders, and anyone else at campaign headquarters right across the country. We'll take you there in just a moment, but first, let's set the stakes. And of course, to help us do that, let's bring in the host of Power Politics, David Cochrane, who is always here when I am here, except when we're both on holidays.
Even
but we're
when
both
on vacation.
Yeah, we're here now. Good to see you.
Yeah.
What are you going to be watching for tonight?
Look, this is not like the last time we did this in April, Rosie, because that night, 3 by-election wins stacked on top of a handful of Conservative floor crossers handed Prime Minister Mark Carney a majority Liberal government. So the stakes are not as high this time. There are 3 seats, like in April, 2 likely safely Liberal, like in April. And the one we're all watching is in Quebec, just like in April. But this time it is that Conservative seat, vacant since Richard Martel went to the Senate. Talking to Conservatives the last 24 to 48 hours, they do not expect to hold this seat. This was a Martel seat, they say, a tough one for them, 3 points separating first from third on Election Day when he won it. So Conservatives are bracing for a loss there tonight. The question is who gains. The Conservatives say early in the campaign they saw the Bloc Québécois punching through, but then the talks broke down in Washington, D.C. And just like in the general election, Donald Trump and the issue of trade and sovereignty has fundamentally reoriented the political currents there, likely in favor of the Liberals. And since then, it's been ad hominem attacks against the Prime Minister, ad hydronym attacks against the Great Lakes. and it's the trade and sovereignty issue has just reoriented the entire campaign. So I'm watching to see what it does in Chicoutimi-Le Fjord. This is not an area where the Liberals typically win in Quebec. They've got a chance to gain one there tonight.
Yeah, and it really will be a microcosm of sort of what is going on in the trade world. Aluminum is an issue there, forestry, supply management is a concern of Quebecers, all that happening against the backdrop of a Quebec provincial election. Okay,
no question.
David, of course, with us through the night, as you would expect, for his analysis, and he'll be telling us what he's hearing from people. Let's go all the way, though, out to the West Coast to start. 2 decades ago, North Vancouver was a right-wing riding, I think that's fair to say, claimed by the Reform Party, then the Canadian Alliance. You can see there on your screen, the Conservatives won it twice during Stephen Harper's years as Prime Minister. But in 2015, you can see that first peak of red there. Jonathan Wilkinson took it by a 30-point margin. That share of vote dropped during the 2 Trudeau minorities and then rocketed back up to a commanding 60% in 2025, again with Jonathan Wilkinson, who It's now gone off to be an ambassador. That happened, though, in part because the plunging vote share by the NDP went to just 4% in what was really a fairly disastrous turnout for them in that particular election. So tonight, we would expect it to stay Liberal, but we will be wanting to see where some of that other support goes. Let's go to John Hernandez. He's in the riding, listening to people, watching people, talking to people. John, what are you hearing about what people are watching for tonight?
Yeah, well, we've been speaking with voters all day, and obviously, you know, the trade war and tariffs are top of mind for many people, but local issues really do shine through in this riding. Affordability is a major issue on the North Shore and in North Vancouver. You know, it's got some of the highest rental rates in the country. Young people have a tough time breaking into the market as well. You know, traffic and public transportation, another big issue. You can ask anybody. Getting over one of the bridges during rush hour can be a bit of a nightmare. So another big issue that people grapple with here. And I bring these up because, you know, while the Liberals have a stronghold here, their candidate, Braden Cayley, isn't a long-standing resident here, unlike some of his opponents who have brought that up. That includes, you know, Stephen Kern, a Conservative candidate who's been a lawyer here, living here for a number of decades as well. NDP's Stephen Tweedale lived here for a number of decades as well, a former provincial constituency staffer, and as well the Green Party candidate, Shelley Luce, also a member of the city's advisory committee over the last number of years. So we'll see if those local ties have any weight in the result tonight.
Braden Cayley, and of course, the former deputy chief of staff to the Prime Minister, helped Mark Carney get to where he is. So certainly might have the ear of the Prime Minister. We'll see whether or not that's a factor for their people too. As well, John Hernandez, thank you for being there. We'll check back with you. Appreciate that. Let's go a little closer to where we are now, and that's Beaches, East York. The Liberals have dominated this riding for decades, with the exception of a little thing called the Orange Wave back in 2011. Since the Trudeau government came to power in 2015, Liberals have posted really huge margins. Look at how that red line tracks up, and see also how that orange line falls. In fact, this is a riding where Conservatives came in second in this Toronto riding in 2025. So let's go to Sheehan Desjardins, who is in that riding tonight, listening to people there as well. Sheehan, we would expect the Liberals to hold here, but what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the Liberal headquarters right now, and it's really starting to fill out. Liberal MP Danielle Martin is here. So is the former Liberal MP for this area, Nate Erskine-Smith. Now, we spent the day wandering around some polling stations. The issues really kind of vary across the board. There's people prioritizing healthcare, concerns around transit, affordability, all sorts of things. But as you can imagine, trade tensions was another one that kept popping up along with the name of Lake Ontario. This is a riding that sits on Lake Ontario. So some voters that we had the chance to speak with told us, you know, they're happy with the way the current government, with the Carney government, is handling these situations, and they want to give them all the tools that they need to be successful. Other people have told us that they're looking for change. So there's 6 candidates running in this riding right now, and that includes for the Liberals, Tanavir Shanawaz, that includes Shannon Devine for the NDP, Jim Sebros for the Conservatives, and Bruce Livesey for the Greens. And as you mentioned, experts do expect that the Liberals will be able to hold on to this riding. It's been Liberal for a number of years. Erskine-Smith was the representative for more than a decade, had a lot of support. So one of the big questions is, if the Liberals win, will they be able to hold that same amount of support? And if not, where are those votes going to go? Is this a place where the NDP, for example, can regain some ground? And there are some big issues in this area too, right? You look, there is talks about expanding a downtown airport, something that quite a few people were against. They want someone who is going to advocate for them in Ottawa, Lake Ontario, as well. So I think people, you know, lots of questions. Will the Liberals be able to hold on to this? If so, by how much? And will the person, what exactly are they going to bring to the table?
Yeah, will the margin be as huge as it was with Nate Erskine-Smith? Is that certainly one to watch, and what happens to the NDP? This is a riding where they should be able to get some support, certainly bring it up from the last election. Sheehan, nice to see you. Thank you for doing that. We'll be back with you, of course, through the course of the evening there in Toronto. All already we've got some early results coming in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. You can see there, again, very, very early, right? One of more than 200 polls reporting, but the Liberals have a little smidge of a lead here. As David mentioned off the top, Conservatives certainly think that the Liberals have a good chance of pulling out and winning this riding tonight. Really a riding where the history is interesting because nobody has a claim, really, to Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. It's changed hands a lot over the last 2 decades. that graph, that messy graph gives you that sign. It's a big prize for any party tonight. Look at the numbers in 2025, though. And the reason it's hard to see is because it couldn't be tighter there. It was a very tight three-way race between the incumbent Conservatives, who pulled it off in the last election, the Bloc, and the Liberals, which makes it, you know, I don't want to give anyone too much attention, but this is the more interesting race. And the CBC's Sarah Levitt is there in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord for us tonight. She won the jackpot, if you will, for by-election night. Sarah, what are you hearing, and then what will you be watching for?
Well, Rosie, outside the Conservative headquarters riding, and you know, it's a bit more subdued than my colleagues there, but that's because the Conservatives said they called it, they're calling it an informal gathering. Inside are some party members, at least one MP. Our colleagues at Radio-Canada were invited inside. We weren't extended that invitation, but you know, it's interesting. It's a tight race, as we've said, but for the past 8 years, the Conservatives have held this riding under Richard Martel. Well-known, well-liked. You know, he coached minor hockey, or junior hockey here, so he was well-known around the community and well-liked. The new Conservative candidate, Régis Gaudreau, longtime lawyer, he might not have that recognition that Martel has. But, you know, for the Bloc, they've gone within party ranks. They've decided they have the candidate Caroline Dubé. She not only was a community organizer, but worked alongside MP Mario Simard, who is the member of parliament just next door from here. And for the Liberals, they decided on someone who is, in fact, a dairy farmer, Daniel Gobet, former president of the Dairy Farmers of Quebec. Interesting there, because what I've heard speaking to people, the biggest issue here is obviously the trade war and what's going to happen there. This industry, the industries here have already been hit. You know, we saw forestry, we hear aluminum, they were hit with tariffs in 2018, and again now dairy, supply management, very important. So those are some of the key concerns among voters here.
Okay, Sarah, as I said, you won the by-election jackpot. There's always a story that's a little bit more interesting, and you got it for us tonight. So we'll come back and check in with you, of course, through the night. We want to draw your attention to the bottom of the screen. You haven't seen us do this since April. We haven't done it since April, so good to remind myself even of what you're going to be seeing on the bottom of your screen. That big bar there, you'll see the percentage of vote counted that each candidate has received. So nothing yet in Beaches, East York. Of course, BC, it hasn't closed yet, but some early results in Quebec. And then on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the party standings. Right now, as the night gets underway, the Liberals have 170 seats, which means that no matter how tonight goes, it still amounts to a majority. Remember, there are more by-elections, a whole lot of them still to come because of departures and other things. So let's talk about how we got here tonight. Canada, your next government will be a Liberal minority government. A little over a year ago, the Liberals under Mark Carney won 169 seats, 3 shy of the 172 needed for a majority in the House of Commons, until
our newest member of the Liberal Party,
a series of defections, mostly Conservatives.
Thank you very much for coming and joining.
He's invited me to bring my experience, my talents, and my views into the large Liberal tent.
But one New Democrat, too.
I'm very thankful to be so warmly welcomed.
And a trio of by-elections in April sent Carney's new government over the tipping point. The CBC News Decision Desk projects a Liberal majority government, the slimmest of majorities. The first majority government since 2015. But tonight, the numbers change again. In recent weeks, 9 MPs have stepped away or promised to, putting the Liberals at 170 seats in the House of Commons. But with the number of vacant seats currently in the House, even if opposition parties win all 3 by-elections tonight, the Liberals still have a majority. But that doesn't mean what happens tonight isn't important. It's a crucial, real-world test in 3 battleground provinces of the Carney government's still new majority. Canada votes, and we are here to break it all down. That's how we got here, and there are 2 more Conservative members who have said that they will leave their seats. Kathy Wagenthal in Yorkton, Melville in Saskatchewan, supposed to leave today, tried all day to confirm whether she had in fact left. Conservatives think that she has, but nothing official yet from the Speaker of the House of Commons, but she is supposed to resign today. And Larry Brock in Brantford, Brant South Six Nations, he is expected to resign, I think in a couple of weeks, sort of mid-September. Mm-hmm. So those are the ones that we know, and then there's other departures to come. A lot of shakeup really inside the House of Commons, sort of not long after an election, but there's a lot of reasons for that. People crossing the floor, people deciding to run provincially, people deciding, I don't really want to sit here if there's a majority government for another couple of years. David, I'll go to you and then I'll bring in our panel just to talk about what you think is at stake for the government. Again, not as dramatic as what we saw back in April, but still important things here and important messages potentially.
It's amazing what a parliament of quitters Canadians selected. People either quit the party or quit their seat like about a year and a bit, not even after the election, right? Look, there is not a tremendous amount at stake for the government tonight except the chance to grow in Quebec, which is an important thing in the Chicoutimi-Lafort seat, and to hold serve. You might want to watch sort of the vote margins a little bit and see if there's a sign of any erosion of strength. Do the New Democrats bounce back in some of the areas where they went into total free fall last time around? But really it is about holding, growing, expanding. Mark Carney is undefeated in by-elections, I believe, since, with the exception of Battle River Crowfoot, where Pierre Poilievre was elected. But since then, they won the 3 in April. They won. They may win the 3 tonight if Chicoutimi-Lafort goes their way. But it's about having a good showing with a good vote share. The stakes are a little bit higher for Mr. Poilievre, who stands to lose a seat potentially in Quebec, based on what Conservatives are saying. I don't think people should take that and extrapolate that to mean a whole lot more than a very strong local candidate leaving a very tight riding and putting that into play. But narrative-wise, as my friend Fred Delory likes to talk about, it is not a good chapter or paragraph in the ongoing Conservative story.
A loss is a loss.
A loss is a loss.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, but we will be watching as well as who wins tonight, sort of some of where the support goes, because that may start to give us a picture of, okay, look, how are people feeling in this moment in the country? We've got some early results there now in Beaches, East York, so let's take a look at those before we bring in our lovely panelists. Okay, very early, of course, but again, this is a Liberal stronghold, so you would expect the Liberals to get out early and in front and hold it. Anything else would be shocking, frankly. But again, it's a test of where everyone else is. And I think that's, in this riding, particularly perhaps important for the NDP, who are being tested, of course, with a new leader. Okay, let's bring in the team that will be here with us mostly all night. Vandana Khattar was an advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Fred Delory, a former Conservative campaign manager, and Nathan Cullen, a former NDP MP and BC NDP minister. Good to see everyone. We wanted to bring in we wanted to make sure we had the West Coast covered with Nathan and have some other voices. And we've got some Quebec voices in particular we'll bring in through the show as well, because as we said, that's a pretty interesting story. Vandana, I'll start with you, because we would expect, I think, 2 Liberal holds, and certainly Conservatives and even some Bloc people are saying they don't think that they think Quebec will go Liberal as well. What are you going to be watching?
I'm watching to see, overall the narrative is good for the government. If the narrative in question for the night is what they're going to pick up, I think that's a positive thing. What I'm curious about is, what happens with the Bloc, considering there is a Quebec election happening right now. Yep. Front runners being the CAQ and the PQ. So we'll have to see how that impacts. But I do think that, right now, people are feeling cautiously optimistic about it. It is not a Liberal riding by any stretch of the imagination, but I think people are feeling good overall, especially given the candidates and where he is on dairy, and the conversation around supply chain will work pretty well in his favor. Yeah. Fred, how about you?
Well, look, this is a Conservative seat that we've won the last number of elections, so it being in play is obviously not a great thing. And the question, what we're looking for, well, obviously, the Conservatives, we're not winning it. but are we going to come in second?
Yeah.
Or are we going to come in third? And what are we doing? We're the official opposition. By-elections are when the official opposition are supposed to do their best. They're supposed to grow. It's an opportunity to do protest against the government. But that's not what's happening the last round, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen this round.
No. And Nathan Cullen, well, how about you? What are you watching for here? I mean, these are ridings where, the two ridings anyway in BC and Toronto, ridings where the NDP should be, I don't know about competitive, but should be in double digits maybe. And that hasn't been the case. So what are you going to watch for there?
I mean, Vancouver North Shore, maybe less so than Beaches. Beaches, we've had some good results, but not as much recently. I think some of the things that we're looking for, some of the things we won't see on our screens tonight, which is as much. What was the ground game like? Avi Lewis has been very focused on building up that network of volunteers, but a good showing, like a solid showing in some tough ridings, and certainly better than we did, will be good. But I am contractually obligated to say these are by-elections, and there's so many things going on. And these, if we think we're going to do well, then we say, oh, this is a real test on the government, and it's a report card. But there's this great big orange shadow looming over our beautiful Lake Ontario and across our border onto all of these events tonight. Donald Trump's on everybody's mind, and he just keeps talking and saying things that I don't think it's his intention, but ultimately are kind of helping the incumbents right now because the threats are so terrifying, often ridiculous, but almost always infuriating.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting. We'll talk about that through the night, how this is, in many ways, because of the way the talks collapsed, almost, a repeat on the election itself, right? We're back into the same narrative with the same fears and concerns around tariffs and trade war, and Canadians in these three provinces being asked again, who do you want to take this on? And we'll see whether the answer is, again, the Prime Minister. Okay, I want to show you a couple of results, and then we'll bring in a couple of our Quebec voices as we see things unfold. Let's start with Beaches. East York. So again, very early, 2 out of 200 polls reporting there, but the Liberals have a bit of a lead. And let's go to Chicoutimi in Quebec. Again, there, just one poll reporting. This is an advanced poll, we're told, that reported early. The other story with by-elections, of course, is turnout. There weren't enormous people voting in advanced polls. It's summer. I know a lot of people are more concerned about getting their kids off to school this week than making sure they get out to vote. So those are also factors to watch through a by-election. But these are important ridings for the government to hold, and certainly important ridings for the other parties to try and grow in. So let's talk a little bit more about Quebec, because as Vantana was saying, there's a lot going on there. There's a provincial election that is slated for the beginning of October with 5 parties and a whole mess of issues. And then there's the real concerns around trade that certainly in this particular riding tonight are being felt in a different way. Jonathan Callis was a Quebec advisor to the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, as well. Christina Michaud, a former Bloc Québécois MP, and Rudy Hesney, a former advisor to Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Nice to see you all.
Good evening.
Yeah, I love that we're spending a little extra time with Quebec because it's kind of the juiciest story and the place where, as we saw in the last election, things were tight, right? It was really anybody's win. I'm going to start with you, Rudy, though, because it was a Conservative win. And the way this has opened up, of course, for the Liberals to, tempt Richard Martel over to the Senate where he thinks he can make a difference. And that's how that riding became available. What are you hearing from Conservatives tonight, Rudy, about holding this riding?
Oh, I don't think they're going to hold that riding. This riding was for Richard Martel. Richard Martel is somebody who's very famous. People liked him in that riding. Normally, there's always kind of a 3-4% advantage for somebody who's well known. I think that in the case of Richard Martel is actually more than that. It will explain why he was able to have this riding, because in the past it used to be an NDP riding. It was a Liberal riding. So it's not like the Conservative had a foothold in that riding if it wasn't for the personality, the charisma of Richard Martel. So now the fight is going to be about the Bloc and the Liberals. We'll see if Mark Carney, who made that gamble of appointing Richard Martel to the Senate, is able to win that seat. And don't forget, last time there was a by-election in Terrebonne. The Bloc Québécois lost. So I know that the Bloc Québécois tried to put as much manpower, especially that they have the riding next to it, to see if they're able to gain that and have kind of a revenge from the Terrebonne by-election.
I think those are all fair points, and totally agree that Jean Martel is sort of a force in that riding and a well-known person, and that makes it a challenge. But if they can't hold that riding, or let's even say they can't be competitive in the riding, the Conservatives, at any point does that have to be a conversation in the Conservative caucus of the Conservative Party about the leader? Because that is a riding where Conservatives, tend to do well in the regions of Quebec. So does that become a concern for Conservatives, do you think, Rudy?
I don't think so, because look, for example, Alain Reyes. Alain Reyes stepped down, became an independent MP, and after there was an election, and the Conservative were able to keep that riding. So I don't think we're in the same neighborhood. It's not next to Quebec City. It's not next to the Beauce. So that's why it's not to be a riding. Yes, of course, there's going to be people who are going to use it and say that it weakens the leadership of Pierre Poilievre. But I think that is always a context about what's happening with the U.S. Also, don't forget that riding has a lot of aluminum, has a lot of lumber, has a lot of supply management, agricultural. All those are in play. And don't forget, last but not least, they took a Liberal who's the former president of the Dairy Farmers of Quebec. So it tells you that he has also a lot of power in that riding. Yeah, that was a fairly wily choice of candidate in that riding, I think, on the Liberals' part. So, Jonathan, let me ask you, what do you think is going to happen here tonight? Do you think this will be a tight win, or do you think the Bloc can pull ahead here?
If we were looking at this maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, I would have said the Bloc were probably the favorites. At this point, I think it's anybody's game. I think it could be very, very tight. I don't know I hope we don't go till, 1 or 2 in the morning, but I think it remains tight. And I think it's a two-way race. I think Rudy's right that the Conservatives probably don't play, and it's mostly the Martel factor. I'm looking to see, in a sense, if the Conservatives fall to third, really how far down they go. And at some point, whether, you want to or not, if it's down to 20, 15%, do people start talking about Pierre Poilievre not really having a showing? And we know that the Liberals put all their effort into this riding. People were coming in from all over to help campaign. That's true of the Bloc. The Conservatives were not putting a full effort there, and that's an interesting decision or choice, I would say. Lastly is the provincial election factor. You said school is returning, today, but also the fact that there's a provincial election. Will that distract people? Will that impact turnout? And what impact will that have on those last-minute decision makers? Do they even go out or say, I'm too busy with everything else that's going on? Okay, Christina Michaud, I want to get you in before the polls close out in BC. Yves-François Blanchet has been there a lot. Very competitive race for the Bloc too. What have you been hearing about how they're feeling about things?
Yeah, well, I think they're hoping to get it. As soon as the seat became vacant, that left the door open for the Bloc Québécois. They had their eyes on that riding for a long time, and it was a close race in 2019, 2021, and again in the last election, 2025. So they've put really all efforts. The leader, François Blanchet, was there, I think, for 2 weeks straight, door knocking, visiting companies, meeting with people. Almost all MPs were there as well. So they've really put all efforts there. They have more financial means as well, because it's a by-election. So of course, more volunteers and everything. So I think they really have their eyes on it. But as the colleagues mentioned before, if it was 2 weeks ago, maybe that would have been a safe one for the Bloc. Now with the trade talks that failed, maybe it changed everything. So maybe it's the biggest campaign machine that will be able to get the voters to the polls that will win this election. Maybe we talked about,
Thank you all for that. I will come back to you because I also want to talk about how the Quebec election provincially factors in here and what messages might be sent to those parties as that election unfolds. Thank you all. We will come back to you through the evening. Great to have you here as our voices on the Quebec race. Let me show you some of the results that have started to come in Ontario and Quebec. We'll start in Quebec. Quebec. In Chicoutimi, the Liberal candidate, Daniel Gobet, leading there, not by a huge margin, by 43 votes. Again, just early results starting to come in, but it sort of shows you what we're expecting through the night. And in Beaches, East York, in Toronto, the Liberal there leading by 10. Again, very early results starting to come in. But this starts to, paint a picture, of course, the things that we're going to watch for through the evening. We've been watching these results come in then from the ridings in Ontario, come in from the riding in Quebec. And of course, there's one more riding. You're about to see another batch of results come in from British Columbia, where we are moments away from polls closing. In the riding of North Vancouver, Capilano, there, the Prime Minister's former Deputy Chief of Staff is the Liberal candidate. They're hoping to hold that riding where Jonathan Wilkinson won by so much for so long. Stay with us. A summer sprint to the ballot box with 3 federal seats up for grabs and the Canada-U.S. trade war at center stage.
You're at war when you get attacked. We got attacked.
Canada's been ripping us off for a long time on trade.
With no new trade deal punishing American tariffs already in place and new Canadian ones about to kick in, this is a chance for voters in 3 provinces hit particularly hard to have their say about all that has happened and what they want to see next.
Trump's tariffs are bad enough. Carney's carbon tax makes it even worse.
It's mean words intended to intimidate.
We need to actually get serious and get started now on building an independent Canadian economy.
Tonight, the federal Liberals' razor-thin majority is put to the test. Polls are now closed in all 3 ridings. The results, moments away. It's Canada Votes by-election night. Okay, there we are now. All 3 ridings are going to start reporting some results so we can see where things land. As we've been talking about, a fascinating and close race in Quebec. But where we just ended, in North Vancouver, Capilano, this is a Liberal stronghold, has been for the past 4 elections. And certainly in the last election, Jonathan Wilkinson won it handily. He decided to take a job offer from the Prime Minister and go off to be an ambassador. But the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief of Staff, Braden Cayley, is running there. Not a well-known figure to the public, perhaps, but a well-known figure in Ottawa and certainly close to the Prime Minister and a key factor in his success. So we'll get to that riding in a moment. We've also, though, already got some results in Quebec and Ontario. Let me show you what those early results are as we wait for some to show up on the West Coast. Chicoutimi-Le-Filleul, let's start there, where the results show us that the Liberal is leading. This was a 3-way race in the last election. We'll see whether that is again the case here. Tonight, the Conservatives really trying to manage expectations. This was one of their ridings. This was their riding before, but their MP has now gone off to be a senator at the behest of the Prime Minister, the Liberal Prime Minister, Richard Martel. Let me show you Beaches in Toronto, just give you a sense of what's happening there. Again, the Liberal with a small lead as there are some early results. Let's head back out to the West Coast now with John Hernandez, who's in North Vancouver, Capilano. Polls are closed, John. I'm sure people are waiting to start see some early results.
Yeah, people are eager to start seeing the early results right now. We are at the Liberal headquarters in the Lower Lonsdale area. This is a pretty vibrant community, and people are pouring into Jack's Pub, waiting for the results to come in. A lot of issues top of mind. The trade war, tariffs are obviously weighing on everybody here. This is very much a border community, Metro Vancouver being so close to the United States. However, a lot of local issues also top of mind here. Affordability is a big issue in North Vancouver. It has one of the highest rental rates in Canada as well. A lot of young people, voters I spoke with today, just wondering when they might be able to break into that housing market. And as well, traffic, public transportation, another major issue that's afflicting North Vancouver. A large segment of the population wants to see more rapid transportation out here, so they want to vote for a candidate that might support future rapid transit projects here. That is something that Braden Cayley, the Liberal candidate for North Vancouver Capilano has pledged to, as well as candidates Shelley Lewis for the Green Party and Stephen Tweedale for the MDP, all have pledged on future rapid transit expansion. The Conservative candidate, Stephen Curran, has made pledges to make the community more affordable for residents here, taking a more of a local approach. That's one thing you hear from voters here. People are conscious that, 3 of the 4 major candidates here do have more roots in North Vancouver when considering Braden Cayley, BC-born political candidate here, but born in Richmond, that's south of North Vancouver, and spent many of his years as the press secretary for Gregor Robertson, who is now a Liberal MP. So we'll see exactly how that factors into the results we get tonight. As you mentioned, the Liberals did win by a large margin in last year's federal election, collecting 60% of the vote. So that may just go to show how concerning the trade war and tariffs were to them during that election. That might carry over to what we see here.
Okay, there have been some big names out there, though, helping Braden Cayley, Dornock, all the ministers that are good at that kind of thing have made the trip out there to help him. So sometimes that kind of factor helps as well. John, we'll come back to you through the evening. Thanks for that. I want to show people some of the results coming in Toronto, Beaches, East York. Let's take a look to see if those numbers have moved at all, and they have. The Liberal lead now has grown to 60 votes, 5 out of 200 polls reporting. Interesting to look there, too, that the NDP has jumped into second place. You would expect, if you were an NDPer, to see a bit of growth, right, in an urban riding in Toronto. Part of the case that the NDP leader Avi Lewis is making is that progressives need to have a place to go if they don't like the direction that the Prime Minister is taking the Liberal Party. We'll see whether any of that starts to appear in the results throughout the evening. Let's go to Sheen Desjardins in Beaches, East York, and I believe she has a guest, a familiar guest for lots of people in that riding, Sheen.
I do, yeah. We're at the Liberal headquarters here. You can see how it's really kind of been filling out. This has been a Liberal riding for a number of years. Recently was represented by former Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith, who joins me now. You were the representative for more than a decade. When you look around here, what goes through your head?
Look, it's an amazing crowd. It's an exciting night, obviously, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all that Tanvir accomplishes as the next Member of Parliament for Beaches East York.
And why Tanvir? Why is he a good candidate here?
So I have been lucky to know Tanvir for over a decade. He started with us as a recent graduate, really, from U of T in political science, and he would volunteer with us. He helped run our youth council, and you could immediately see other young people gravitated to him and his leadership and charisma and kindness. And from there, he grew into a role managing my constituency office, worked side by side with me delivering housing projects across the country, and he knows every corner of the riding. He's ready to hit the ground running, and honestly, I trust him more than anyone, and he's going to be great.
A lot of the people that we've had a chance to speak with here, they tell us that they met him while they were working with you. That's how that connection was made. And even at the polling stations today, people were telling us, they had so much support for you that they've decided to then in turn support him. What does that say to you?
Well, it's very kind, and I've been lucky to represent Beaches East York and to grow up here and then to serve here. Tanvir also grew up here and now has an opportunity to serve here. And I think people will increasingly see the same things in him that I have seen, which is incredible leadership skills, charisma, kindness, thoughtfulness, and really the ability to bring a team together. And it's very, I can't tell you what a great feeling it is to pass the baton to someone that you trust to serve a community that you really support and believe in.
But of course that comes at a challenging time. I mean, when you look at what's going on with the United States, experts expecting a Liberal win, if that does happen, what would Tanvir be up against?
It's incredibly important in this moment that we have strong national leadership. There's no question about that, and we do. That needs to be complemented by serious, thoughtful local leadership, and I think that's what we're going to see when Tanvir's elected tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Back to you.
Okay, Sheen Desjardins with Nate Erskine-Smith there in the riding that he held for a long time. Of course, he is now off to run for City Council, I believe, in Toronto. So not leaving politics, just staying a little closer to home. Want to show you a picture of what is happening in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord as we wait for more results, particularly on the West Coast where we haven't seen anything yet. Here you're able to see the vote share. So there's 15 of 212 polls reporting. Again, these are early results, but you can start to see the gap widening, certainly for the Liberal Party at 48.9%. But look at where the Conservatives are. far at 13%. There was, everyone that David and I were speaking to, conservative-wise, were certainly suggesting that third place was probably where they would end up tonight. Those numbers are starting to track in that direction, and that will be for a lot of reasons, but perhaps primarily because of what's happening with Donald Trump and the very real concerns in that part of the country and in that particular riding that is really feeling some of the tariffs, particularly in the aluminum sector and the forestry sector. We're going to go back out to North Vancouver, Capilano, where John Hernandez has a guest now. John. Thank you, Katie. Okay, we've got the wrong audio there. I'm just going to give us another chance to see if
How are you feeling?
Okay,
We're feeling
John's
good.
got it.
Look,
We'll
I've
go
been at the doors a lot here in this riding. Spent a lot of time. I've known Braden 20 years. I think we're going to have a good win here this evening. I think the message is going to be very, very clear that Canadians and folks here in North Van Capilano, here on the North Shore, like what the Prime Minister is doing. They want another member of Parliament to be in that caucus with the Prime Minister, doing his work alongside Terry and Patrick, who are fantastic colleagues. And adding Braden to the mix is going to be really good for the country. It's going to be great for the North Shore.
You're from this community. What are the big issues that affect residents here?
Look, I think it's going to be the issues that we all hear about, right? It's affordability, it's housing, it's, taking care of where we are right now in the world. And I think the biggest issue in everyone's mind is making sure that we deal with our economy. And what's happening with the United States has been a real wake-up call. You look at what's happening down at C-SPAN, and lots of work happening there as a result of the new policies that our government has put in place. And I think in this community, people are saying very, very clearly, look, focus on building the economy, focus on protecting Canadians, focus on protecting our interests, diversify the economy. It's an incredible place here in the North Shore, and they wanted a member of Parliament that I think is going to be able to do those things and push for those things.
And obviously, we're a border community in Metro Vancouver. I'm assuming, this trade talk, the tariff concerns here, weighing a lot of the residents here. What have you been hearing?
Look, I think every door I have been to where I've spoken to somebody that's wanted to talk about this, they've said, look, it's really important that we send a message not just to the Prime Minister, but to Trump, that we're behind our Prime Minister, that we're united as Canadians, and that we're going to fight like hell to make sure we protect Canada. It's a wonderful thing to hear. I mean, it's not a happy moment in that sense, but it's a moment of a lot of pride, right? There's tremendous pride in hearing your fellow citizens saying, look, we love what you're doing, keep at it, we're in this together. That's an important moment.
Obviously, Braden, BC born and raised, but not from North Vancouver. Do you think that affects his chances at all, considering, three of his opponents have ties to this community?
Look, I think what Canadians, what the folks that I've spoken to here are looking for, they're looking for someone that's going to work hard for them, that's going to give it his all, that's going to be able to have a voice with the Prime Minister. And more importantly, I think above all of it, they want the Prime Minister to know that there's somebody from their on his team that's from their community. And I think that's what's important here. And so I think Braden's going to spend all the time he needs to know to get to know this community even better than he already has. But he knows BC, right? He's from here, he's grown up here. It's not his fault he spent 10 years fighting for BC in Ottawa. I mean, that's a great service to all of us. And the fact that he is doing this right now, I think, speaks volumes for the kind of person that he is.
Sure. Kyle, thank you so much. That's Kyle Nur Mohammed, MP for Vancouver-Granville.
Okay, John Hernandez, thank you for that out on the BC on the West Coast. Want to bring in the panel for a moment. Maybe I'll start with you, Vandana, just about Braden Cayley, someone we all know pretty well, just because he has been sort of attached to the Prime Minister even before he was Prime Minister. So I wonder whether that gives him an advantage. I mean, people may or may not know that. Is that a factor? Are they really just voting for Mark Carney? How do you interpret the fact that Liberals at least think that they're going to hold this seat?
I mean, I think the advantage for Braden is that he's worked in party politics. So he understands how to run a ground organization. Like, he was talking to me about advanced polls and getting your vote out. So that's something that he doesn't have the jarring shock of a candidate trying to understand how to run a campaign, what they're responsible for, what they can do, what they can't do. So he has that as his advantage. Whether him being Deputy Chief of Staff to Carney or whatnot, I don't know if that plays in the broader scheme of things. I think they're really just voting for Mark Carney. Does he have a good background? Sure. I think for insiders, they feel like their riding may be connected to the Prime Minister. Maybe it has a bit more sway. But really, I think people are voting for Mark Carney. And, if you think about it, that's the biggest port. So a lot of tariff things are really affecting that area. So I think, that would be the main reason people will go behind.
One of the things that we noticed, Fred, for the Conservative candidate who ran in the last election as well, he did not have Pierre Poilievre on his website, not in any overt way, certainly didn't have him on his signs, even talked about behind closed doors how he was hearing things about the Conservative leader being divisive. But then you hear Talib Nur Mohammed talk about how, if you want to take on Donald Trump, you have to vote for Mark Carney. I mean, that's not actually technically true. You could choose a different party and it would just send a different kind of message. But it gives you a sense of what the Conservatives are up against in this by-election and particularly in this moment.
Yeah, look, the Liberals have a very well-established and strong narrative that they're running on, and they have the leader that fits it very well. The Conservatives, we're kind of flailing right now. We're not sure what we're doing. We're coming out, our messaging on the trade issue has been all over the place. It hasn't been very sensible, and it sounds like you're questioning whether, what side you're on when you're saying, show us the deal, show us what we turned down.
Yeah.
And we're struggling with that. It's been a mess for the last, really the last 6 or 7 months. It's been getting worse and worse. We're losing MPs. We're struggling in these by-elections. We're down in fundraising. We have a big problem in front of us, and something's got to give soon.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more through the night. I just don't know what it is. You could just say, okay, just scrap the leader, start again. But I don't know what the strategy is, I think, in this moment, given how concerned people are about something else.
The leader needs to set a strategy that is coherent and makes sense. Right now, we're flailing. We don't have something. We've had issues throughout the summer, a number of issues. We had 2 shadow cabinet ministers fighting each other, arguing in public on Twitter. We've had, several MPs going way off message on things, and our leader's been silent through all.
Well, just on the issue set that are going to drive the by-election results tonight, Jamil Javani has been criticizing the government from walking away from a trade deal that targeted the trucks made in the plant in his riding. You know what I mean? So here you have an auto-riding MP criticizing the government for walking away from a deal that would have killed the plant in his riding. That is not coherent with what Pierre Poilievre is trying to do, and it speaks to kind of an inability to control the caucus fully, to have message discipline.
And I think, to be fair to Mr. Poilievre, how difficult it is to come up with a strategy that's going to work and that's going to convince both Conservative MPs and Canadians. I want to bring Nathan in for a minute, if I can, Nathan, because I do think, I know you said that this isn't the most welcoming NDP riding, but it is still a place where you have had double digits before. And I would argue that in a time when you have a Prime Minister, hoping and pushing and working with an Alberta Premier for another pipeline, that these are issues that might come up in this riding and that might get progressives thinking about where the best place to put their vote is. I don't know. Is that a crazy notion that might be something at play as well? Yeah. Okay.
Well, we saw it in Toronto around the island airport.
Yeah, that's right.
The Mark Carney government very, very quickly, and somewhat to Premier Ford's deep concern, reverse course on maybe expanding the airport in Toronto to jets, which was not popular in beaches. Yeah. On North Shore of Vancouver, absolutely the issues of pipelines and oil, climate change. We had another bad fire season this year. Those are top of mind. Except in those rare circumstances when a U.S. president says he wants to take over your country and threaten your entire economy, it gets trumped, so to speak. And what Mr. Carney is not being judged on, to his benefit, I would say, is the commitment he had made and the hope that he had, and I believe it was sincere, to actually settle some kind of a trade deal with Donald Trump, probably by this point. But because of the nature of Mr. Trump, the deal falling apart just last week, we are, as you said, rerunning the same question to many Canadian voters of the threat is there. Who do you want to best handle it? It's a chaotic world. And on the Conservative side, if you want to see chaos, check out the BC Conservative Facebook group if you've got a minute. There's a problem in the coalition right now, as that coalition of voters that every party wants to work with, as to who they are and what they want to be. And if you'll remember, Mr. Poilievre was very involved in wanting to be involved in BC politics and supporting the leader that has currently who has lost a third of her caucus already. Yeah,
just to go back to the Orange team, though, it is just as difficult for Avi Lewis to break through on this story as it is for Pierre Poilievre, even with far fewer seats and far less support. It just seems very challenging for any opposition party in this moment, right?
Absolutely, because how do you have a critical or oppositional kind of position when Canadians are saying we need to stand together, essentially across the political spectrum for a lot of good reasons? Sure. That is true, but I think Mr. Lewis, in just the last week, in terms of supporting the Prime Minister's move to step away from a bad deal, shows that there's an articulation that's coming and being built right now, and then speaking to Canadians that are saying, We did give Mr. Carney our vote last time. It was a vote in that dire circumstance of a threat to Mr. Trump. But we do still remain concerned about things like the planet and fairness and affordability. North Vancouver Island has one of the lowest rental it's mostly home ownership, 60% plus. It's one of the wealthiest ridings in the country. So the volunteers have been coming in. I was just on North Shore. It looks great. But our expectations are for sure modest. But yeah. I think those issues will continue to rise, especially when Mr. Trump's power hopefully erodes by the next time Canadians go to the polls.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, everybody. I want to show you a little bit of where we are in the evening in terms of results. Also want to remind you there's no longest ballot protest vote. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So that means we probably won't be here till 1 or 2 or 3, but like touch wood on that, because who am I to know? Let's start. Where should we start? In Beaches, East York, to show you the results there. And in both of these circumstances, both in this riding in Toronto and in the next one we'll show you in Quebec, the Liberals are growing their lead. So all the way up to 459 votes here for the Liberal candidate, with about 25 out of 200 polls reporting. But again, an interesting thing to look for there is the NDP in second place, because the Conservatives were in second place in the 2025 election. So, you know, if the NDP is looking for signs of life and something encouraging for them to forge ahead, that might be something that they want to keep an eye on there. Let me show you now what we're seeing in Quebec. Again, we're showing that the lead is widening, again, in this case, for the Liberal candidate, Daniel Gabay, now leading by 600 votes in that riding. Again, Bloc in second, and the Conservatives, where many of them thought they would be tonight, and that is in third place. And I think a part of the story we'll watch there is not only who wins and who comes in second, but what the vote share is for all three of those parties, and whether the Conservatives can maintain sort of a fighting chance, a legitimate amount of support, a competitive amount of support, or whether it completely collapses. And then, of course, there will be a postmortem on why that is. And is it just about trade, or is it just about the candidate, or is it about the leader as well? Those will be questions to ask and answer in the days ahead. We are still waiting for some early results from North Vancouver, Capilano. I saw there that I had Rudy Husney. Maybe I can go to him as we just saw those results widening in Chicoutimi. Rudy Husney, so the Liberals broadening their lead there. Tell me whether you think, or how you think, the Quebec election might be playing into this as well. Because if you have a provincial election and you're worried about Donald Trump, are you trying as a voter to sort of see where you park your vote in terms of what might make sense, do you think?
Yes, I think that it makes sense in terms of people don't want to see change. The problem is when you're in the middle of this trade war, people don't want to change the prime minister, obviously. And if you look at the latest polls in Quebec, slowly but surely, the incumbent premier is getting a bump in the polls, and we'll see tomorrow. There's going to be a very important Léger poll. We'll see if the CAQ is going to be second. They used to be third. Yeah. And if even the Liberal vote in Quebec is going down at the provincial level, meaning that there's less desire for change. And that's what we are seeing also in that by-election. I mean, people would think, oh, maybe strategically they would drop the vote for the Conservative, go to the Bloc Québécois, make sure they have a strong opposition, making sure that there's no sacrifice when it comes to supply management, for example, or anything that was discussed during the negotiation. But there's also the feeling that, you know, in Quebec, we're sentimental, and I believe we're still in love. When I say we, I mean Quebecers are still in love with Prime Minister Carney, and they trust him in terms of what's happening right now. There was even a poll this afternoon that was released saying that 75% of Quebecers were supporting the fact that we were going to have counter-tariff and the strategy when it comes to the pulling out of negotiation. So you can see that there's still some very strong showing for the Prime Minister. Yep. 2 weeks ago, wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. People had doubt. Was there going to be some concession? Was culture on the table? There was going to be some people asking a lot of questions. Maybe the Bloc. I don't know exactly the turnout in terms of the vote that were casted during that period. But you can see now by those results that people still trust Mr. Carney.
Yeah. Okay. Rudy Husney, thank you for that. We'll come back to you. As Rudy was talking, we wanted to give you a picture of the vote share and how it's changed in that riding of Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Remember, this was a Conservative riding held by the very popular MP Richard Martel for an awfully long time, and he had won by a lot. But if you see now, the vote share The Liberals are up close to 50%. But look at where the Conservatives are, 13.6%. So you can see that there's a lot of vote transference. There's a lot of things moving around in terms of the vote and moving away from the Conservative Party. Certainly, I want to bring in Jonathan Kalis just to talk about this for a moment as we wait to see whether BC's going to pop up some results pretty soon. Jonathan, I mean, I want to talk to you about the Quebec election too, but is this really just about we are scared of Donald Trump and we still believe in the Prime Minister's ability to do this, do you think?
I suspect that's a big part of this, but you know, what's the Bloc won on most of the time when they've been able to pick up seats is they were the ones standing up for Quebec. They were the ones who said, you need our voice there to make sure that our issues aren't forgotten. But if Mark Carney walked away from the table and one of the issues was culture and language, well, he's the one who's standing up for Quebec. So what's the Bloc's strong point? They kind of lost on that. And to Rudy's point from a minute ago, you know, when we were hearing there could be concessions on dairy or on the culture issue, there was some kind of wavering. And so that's why I think, you know, once that deal blew up, and it blew up a week, 9 days ago, going into the advanced polling. So I don't think the numbers are huge for the turnout of advanced polling, but that probably had had an impact right away. People going into the voting booths, and the last week since then, that momentum has carried. So I think that's what we're probably seeing.
And the fact that the vote, and David, I know you want to, and I'll bring you in a second, the fact that the vote seems to be going from the Conservatives to the Liberals and not to the Bloc, is that then, and I'll bring in Christina Michaud as well to respond to this in a moment, but do you think that that should be concerning for the Bloc leader, that people are not seeing him as, he can defend Quebec, but there's only so much he can actually do?
Well, that was the essence of his entire campaign. He's nominated a candidate in St. Hyacinthe, where we'll have another by-election in a few months, who's also from the dairy industry. That was one of his biggest issues that he was campaigning on in the first few weeks. And now he's lost that issue, so it's a real challenge. And when we went in, and earlier on we were saying it could be very tight, the real question was, we all expected the Conservative vote to drop. We didn't know how much, and we weren't exactly sure where it was going to split. It seems to be splitting more towards the Liberals than to the Bloc.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, when you're, and David, you can jump in here at any time, but when you see the leader of the Parti Québécois say, because of Donald Trump, I will not hold a referendum on sovereignty until he's gone. I don't know. To me, that seems like a very challenging position for the leader of the Bloc Québécois then, because they're putting aside sort of their raison d'être. It validates the fact that, well, the Bloc is really not maybe the choice if you're worried about that right now.
Well, the issues with the Donald Trump effect on politics is that the issues and the problems he presents can be both absurd and existential at the same time.
That's right.
Right? The ad hydronym, as I called it, attack on Lake Ontario, changing it to Lake America, that's nonsense trolling. But when Jameson Greer does an interview with you and very calmly says our goal is to reindustrialize our country, and we're going to do that by effectively deindustrializing your country and every other country, that is where the existential bit comes in. And this is the overlay on every voting choice that is happening in many ways in the country right now. It's obviously affecting the Quebec election because, while a sovereign Quebec may very well be the PQ's ultimate goal, that's when you're dealing with an Ottawa you don't like your arrangement with. How are you going to survive in a Donald Trump MAGA world should that persist, beyond Donald Trump's departure? So that affects things, that changes things. And if you look at where the votes are going right now, and we still got a long way to go. So I'm not getting ahead of the decision desk here. But the Conservatives in their public standing are nowhere near where they were on election night when they got 40% of the vote, right? The gap between Pierre Poilievre and Maxime Bernier is narrower than the gap between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney right now in terms of choice for best prime minister. And you look at where their vote is in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, they're down 20 points as of right now. It was basically a third last time. 34.1 for the Conservatives, 31.2 for the Bloc, 31.1 for the Liberals. The Liberals were in third. Liberals are flirting with 50. The Bloc are right around where they were at 34%. It's the Conservatives that have dropped, and it looks like the Liberals are the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, and for sure, Conservatives, dialing my number right now, totally about your candidate and the strength of your previous candidate, Richard Martel. But if that's the only message that is taken from the by-election tonight, that I think probably would be a mistake for the future of what happens to the Conservatives in Quebec. I want to bring in Christina Michaud, who was, of course, a Bloc MP, just for her perspective perspective here on what you think this means, Christina, because there's a lot going on at the same time for the Bloc and for people in this riding. And if they are thinking about sort of the biggest danger at the moment, which they would see to be the economic threat of Donald Trump and what he's doing to that riding, very, very tough circumstances for Yves-François Blanchet. And I wonder whether that would give him pause. Like, does he need to rethink his strategy if he can't sell himself as the best defender of Quebec?
Well, I have to say the Bloc Québécois had some gains over the years. If we think about the bill about the supply management protection during commercials, commercial relationship, it was proposed by the Bloc Québécois and it was adopted. So that was a good thing. Sure. And I think Mr. Blanchet proved that he can work well with Mr. Carney as well. So he's not just in a position that opposes all the time. He's been putting some propositions forward, and some of them have been accepted by Mark Carney himself. So I think his strategy is also to show that he can work together with that government that holds that takes the decisions in the relationship with the United States. But I mean, locally, I think it's a good campaign for the Bloc Québécois. We've talked about Mario Simard, the neighboring ridings, Alexis Duceppe, which are appreciated in their ridings. They're present. They are mediatically very present all the time. So that's appreciated by the voters. And Martin, we've talked about his popularity, but he had a different style. So I think people would like to have an MP that is present with their in their events and everything. Sure. But aside from that, I think it might be more a national campaign because of all the tariff talks, and that may favor the Liberal at the end and not the Bloc Québécois, unfortunately.
Okay, Christina Michaud, thank you for that. We'll come back to you. Appreciate your analysis. Let me show you what's going on in Chicoutimi-Les-Fjords. I should say we're still waiting for some results to start popping up on the West Coast, but we are able to show you where things stand in Quebec. And this is about a third of the polls reporting. So we're starting to see a pretty clear direction, right? Liberals ahead by more than 1,000 votes. And the Conservatives, remember, they were the incumbent party here anyway, although a different candidate, trailing in third place, and the Bloc up in second place. So we'll continue to watch things as it unfolds there. The CBC's Sarah Levitt is in Chicoutimi-Les-Fjords, which is a beautiful place to be, but she's moved inside to a pub. Where are you located now, Sarah?
Yeah, we're party hopping, Rosie. Right now we're at the Bloc Québécois party. Number of MPs here, everybody kind of glued to the television. They have Radio-Canada on TVA. They're watching it all as these numbers come in. And I'm with Marie-Lynne Gill. She's the MP for the Côte-Nord. Thank you very much. What are you thinking as you see these numbers come in? We knew it was going to be a tight race. It's early days still, but there's starting to be what looks like a lead for the Liberals. Tell me what you're thinking.
Well, we did everything what we had and wanted to do. We did we did camping, and Caroline Dubé did camping in the field. We wanted to address every issues that the people from Lac Saint-Jean, not Lac Saint-Jean, Saguenay, Lac Saint-Jean, Chicoutimi-Les-Fjords wanted us to address. So we're quite satisfied about the campaign. So I know, it's quite soon. We don't want these results to be the final ones, but still we did everything we wanted to bring in the campaign. Quebec must be defended, and right now we see it with the tariffs, even with what happened last week. Still forest industry, aluminum. We proposed a lot of solutions. We suggested a lot of solutions. We would want them to be applied. The government is interested also in it, so I think we did everything. So now we're looking forward for the final results also.
Yeah, and so I've spent the past couple days here, and among the big concerns of voters is that trade talk. How much do you think the Bloc has been impacted perhaps negatively by the fact that these talks have now broken off between the reigning Liberal Party and the U.S. Has that helped, hindered the bloc? Some could argue that perhaps it's been helpful for the Liberals.
Yeah, it's a good question since we don't have the final numbers, but I did feel when I was door knocking, people told us about Trump and also about tariffs. So I felt a bit like in 2025, where I did campaign, and we sometimes couldn't talk about certain issues because people were focused on the tariffs. So I couldn't say it was exactly the same thing because I did not do the exact same work here on the field, but I did phone calls, I knocked on doors, and I heard it a bit, even strategic for the economy, not for the economy, but for Trump, for example. So I heard it maybe 2 or 3 times, but people did speak about that. So of course I keep in mind that it could have an influence on the final result, of course.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. So that's Marilyn Gill, who is, of course, the MP for the Bloc Québécois in the Côte-Nord. Back to you.
Okay, Sarah Levitt, thank you for that. Very much reflecting what we've been hearing here, too, that there was a shift that happened in that riding as soon as the trade talks fell apart and the Prime Minister had to walk away from those talks. I want to show you what's happening in Beaches, East York, if I can. Here again, you're seeing, and David, I'll get you to weigh in here on what we're seeing, and that is the Liberals now with a lead of over 1,800 votes. Again, the NDP holding in at second place, which would be like encouraging for them. This is a Liberal stronghold. Liberals would expect to hold it. What do you make?
Well, look, the NDP's up 19 points in terms of the vote share from the general election, where they kind of went into absolute free fall.
They sure did, yeah.
And had a terrible election night for them. So this will be a sign of hope, certainly for Avi Lewis, as he seeks to rebuild the party, largely by targeting, I would say, urban progressive voters and a blend of trade union and working class voters. So this is a good thing for the New Democrats. It is a drop in vote share as of right now for the Liberals.
And for the for the Liberals, sure. But
maybe not surprising, because that's a lot of those voters maybe going home. But also, and something to note about all 3 of the seats tonight, Rosie, these are consequential MPs who are being replaced, right?
Sure.
Nate Erskine-Smith, he's had a year. Like, he's had 3 movements. He started the year as a cabinet minister and as an MP, and then he resigned because he was going to seek the Ontario Liberal leadership, and now he's running for city council in Toronto.
Not a wallflower kind of guy. Yep.
No, but he was a guy who made his voice heard and was known and strong on issues. So he's had like a symphony of 3 movements. Jonathan Wilkinson was obviously a key cabinet minister in the Trudeau government, big on the environmental agenda, and Richard Martel, as we talked about, the type of guy who can win a seat for the Conservatives in Quebec and hold that seat for the Conservatives in Quebec. I think it's an interesting market correction from the 2025 election happening in Beaches that I think the NDP will take some comfort in, and maybe the Conservatives, Fred, because a strong NDP is apparently the path back, right? If they can get,
that's what Conservatives tell me.
If they can bleed enough vote away and split, it could change things, right?
That was always the big talking point after the last election, right? Well, the NDP collapsed. That's why we didn't win. We're seeing these numbers right now. The NDP are back up. We're still not winning. Yeah. We're still way back. They're taking vote. It's not from the Liberals.
Yeah, it is interesting, though, if the NDP, so they got 7% in the last election. So if they are now in second place, listen, an NDP's, they're not going to win, but I think they would see that as encouraging where we are in terms of...
Moral victories are hard to sleep with, though, in politics, because all power is derived from the ballot box.
That's right. But anyway, we'll keep watching Beaches, East York, and Chicoutimi. We still have no results in North Vancouver, Capilano. No reason to panic. As I said, there's no long ballot this time around because of various changes made to the law, which have made it very difficult for that protest movement against First Past the Post to delay results and to impact these by-elections in protest movement. Let's go out, though, to the West Coast, to John Hernandez, who has a guest with him. John.
Yes, I'm here with Patrick Weiler, the MP for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country. We're not getting much in the way of results just yet from the polls, but what's going through your mind right now?
Well, I've been seeing some of the results come in for the other 2 by-elections, and we've seen some very strong results. I've been out there on the campaign throughout out, including today, and have been receiving an amazing response at the doors, and a tremendous amount of effort's been put in. We've got a great leader and Prime Minister and a fantastic candidate in Braden.
Obviously, part of this riding actually used to be part of your riding. What are some of the unique challenges, I guess, specific to North Vancouver Capital Riding?
Well, as you said, it's a riding that covers 3 municipalities: the District of North Vancouver, the City of North Vancouver, and now the District of West Vancouver. I mean, it's an area that I know really well because it's part of the riding that I actually grew up in, and that I represented for 5.5 years. And so, what makes this riding a little bit challenging is, it's now some distinct areas put together. But it's also an area that's really critical for the moment that we're in right now, because this riding contains a big part of the largest port in our country and one of the main shipbuilding areas in C-SPAN. And so, what I've been hearing throughout is that people are foursquare behind Mark Carney and his plan to build Canada strong, and playing their part here and making sure that we can do everything we can to stand up to Trump's tariffs.
And you were knocking on doors this morning. Was that a big concern just from constituents throughout the day here?
Yeah, I really started seeing it beginning of last year, the Canadian flags out, people pulling together, our country coming together like never before that I've seen in my lifetime. And that's what I've been hearing at the doors, that people are there, they're strong behind us, and it's been a really strong response throughout.
What would Braden Cayley, as an MP, mean for this community?
Well, Braden's someone that has spent most of his career working in government and politics. He's someone who's worked in 2 different constituency offices. He's worked in the office of the Mayor of Vancouver, and he's worked also as the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. So he's someone that has a pretty unique experience and understanding of everything from the constituency side to how cabinet works. And so I think he'd be an extremely strong voice for the riding and someone that can contribute in ways that are pretty unheard of for an MP.
That's Patrick Weiler, the MP for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast and Sea to Sky Country. Rosemary.
Okay, John Hernandez, thank you for bringing us a guest. And guess what? The decision desk is ready to make a projection at this moment. Make a call. Let's take a look. The CBC News Decision Desk is calling the riding of Beaches, East York for the Liberal Party with a lead of more than 2,700 votes. The CBC is confident in projecting that the Liberal candidate, Tanvir Shanawaz, will take that riding, will hold that riding for the Liberals. Nate Erskine-Smith, of course, the incumbent. You can see him there in the relaxed red ball cap. Tanvir Shanawaz was the constituency office manager for Nate Erskine-Smith. But also very well known in that neighborhood and had spent a long time there. He has pulled it off tonight. The Liberals are holding this riding in Beaches, East York.
Okay. So, thank you all for being here. We're in beautiful Beaches, East York. I'm going to be brief. You got to know, Tanvir is the greatest guy. I've known Tanvir for over a decade, and there is nothing more important in politics than trust, and here is someone I trust completely. He is someone who I've seen grow over 10 years. Although I was elected at 31, you're elected at 30. You're already beating me by a year. There we go. This is a guy. Yeah, roll tape. This is a guy who started with us in 2016. I was new to politics. He was new to politics. He just graduated from U of T, and he started volunteering, getting to know the community, born and raised in Crescent Town, and getting to know the rest of the community. And that's right. And here's a guy who put the hard work in to go from volunteering to then running our youth council. And I was saying to people earlier today, you could immediately see other young people gravitate to him because of his charisma, his thoughtfulness, his kindness, his hard work. He was already showing leadership then, and he grew into running our constituency office. In the pandemic, he helped people. The most underserved parts of our riding got better service because of this guy. And look, he's someone who knows our riding, knows every corner of the riding. He's got the experience to hit the ground running. And Beaches East York, I trust this guy completely. Here's your next member of parliament for Beaches East York.
Okay, there's one riding called for the Liberals. Now let's go to another, the CBC News decision desk, ready to make another call. And in the riding of Chicoutimi-Le-Fillon, the Liberals are, the new Liberal MP is Danielle Gobet in that riding, in the Quebec riding, winning that riding for the Liberals. It had been a very tight race in 2025. Not this time. The Liberals have won by more than 2,100 votes. The Bloc Québécois in second, and the Conservatives, who had held this riding under Richard Martel, way below there in third place. A big win for the Liberals tonight, which might have a lot to do with Donald Trump, might have a lot to do with the Prime Minister's decision on how to walk away from those trade talks. And what is at stake in this particular riding? That is the scene there in Chicoutimi-Le-Fillon, where the Liberals have pulled it off and they've won that riding. That is a pickup for the Liberals tonight. Let's go back, though, to Toronto, where the Liberals have held that riding, and that is the MP-elect, Tanveer Shahnawaz, talking about his win here tonight.
And if it's the thousands of conversations that we've had over these last few weeks, it's making sure that we are community building, that we are supporting Mark Carney's Liberal government in some much needed nation building. I'm going to be so looking forward to learning and working alongside such wonderful colleagues that we are so proud to be our Liberal government here. I think it's a great time to be a Liberal in Canada and in Beaches East Shore. My family, my mom, my dad, and my brother, they immigrated to this country from Bangladesh the year that I was born. I was born in East General, what is now Michael Garron. I've never left this riding, and it is going to be an honor of a lifetime with community experience, hard work, and representation that we continue building Canada strong, that we continue building Beaches East Shore stronger. Let's get to work. Thank you very much. All right, and I'll just
say... That is the new MP-elect for
right
Beaches East York, who has won with 55% of the vote there, which is not that far off than what the incumbent Nate Erskine Smith had with 68%. So a very good showing for a new MP-elect who will be making his way to Ottawa. Let's go to Sheen Desjardins, who is trying to hear what I'm going to say. How are people feeling there tonight, Sheen?
Liberal government. Thank you very much.
I don't know. You can probably hear it for yourselves. The speeches are just wrapping up behind me. Oh. I'm sure you can hear the Tanveer chant. The whole room just erupting, essentially, in Tanveer chants following that speech. You know, we've had a chance to speak with people throughout the day today. It wasn't much of a surprise. They expected that the Liberals would win. And now, you know, here we all are, and I'm going to bring in a friend who knows Tanveer right here, rising from down up, trying to not block the camera so we can see the speech. All right, walk me through, what does this moment mean? What is this like?
I am so immensely proud of my friend Tanveer. I met him 7 years ago when I started volunteering with Nate Erskine Smith, and he has become one of my closest and one of my best friends. And I would say to the people watching at home tonight, if there was a Canadian dream, there is one in Tanveer Shahnawaz's story. This man was born and raised in this riding. He has been nothing but a community organizer and a public servant. And he is a great guy.
And I heard that they knocked on 70,000 doors. That's a humongous number. I had to double check it with them. Does that surprise you at all?
No, it does not. That is what our team has always done, year after year, every summer in this riding. We knock on doors in Beaches, East York.
When you look at your friend right up there, what goes through your mind when you see him?
Not gonna lie, it's gonna start getting strange, but you know what? If anyone deserves it, it's him. He has worked for this year after year, and I have nothing but pride for my friend. And it's so great. And, you know, as a young Liberal leader like myself, that's where I met him. I was 16, he was 23, now I'm 23, and now he's a member of Parliament. It's very strange.
What a moment. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
So, I mean, we've kind of been hearing, and I'm sure we'll hear more stories like that, stories of celebration, of excitement. There's lots of people I've talked to that met him when he was working in Nate Erskine-Smith's office. They've known him, they've seen him grow up, they've watched him grow. So just certainly a very exciting moment for Tanvir here today.
Okay, Shanir, if you get Tanvir, you can come back and maybe we can chat with him as well. Thank you for that. Appreciate it very much. Want to show people where the results are in the one riding we haven't called, which of course is on the West Coast. That's in North Vancouver, Capilano. Let's take a look at what we're seeing so far. So early results there. Braden Cayley, the Liberal candidate, off to a lead at this stage. That's kind of interesting, though. The Conservatives and the Greens, almost tied for second place. But these are very, very early results. Can I show again what we saw in Chicoutimi, though, before we come back to our panel to talk a little bit about that and then the win in Beaches, East York? We have also called Chicoutimi for the Liberal Party. Daniel Gabay, another MP-elect, winning by more than 2,400 votes. The Bloc in second at just over 5,500, and the Conservatives at 20. I don't know if they have the vote share there. That might be good to show as well. Just because the vote collapse of the Conservative Party is quite significant in Chicoutimi. Remember that in the last election they won with 34% of the vote, and now in this election 13%, which is David, a pretty...
Well, the gap is wild because in the last election, the margin from first to third was 3 points.
That's right.
Now the margin from first to third is 36 points.
See, that's why I'm so glad you're here, because math.
Right, but I mean, it is a stunning drop for the Conservatives, right? Going from 34.1% of the vote down to 13.1% of the vote. The Liberals, with about 50% or more than 50% of the polls reporting, 61% of the polls reporting, they have 49% of the vote. This is why the decision desk is able to make a call this early or a projection, this early on the one riding that we thought might be really competitive. The Bloc has basically held serve, grown a little bit. 31% is what they got on election day in 2025. 34% is what they have now. Christina Michaud, though, saying earlier that the collapse of the trade talks may have turned this from a local campaign to a national campaign, which tilted it maybe against the BQ because
probably nothing though for the Bloc to feel too badly about tonight, because they've sort of done what they did in the last election. Didn't maybe take an opportunity, but to your point, the trade talks collapsed. Vandana, do you want to weigh in on both of those wins? Let's start with Chicoutimi and what that tells you.
Well, I mean, it's a great win for the government. I think they had the right candidate and the right message overall, and I think that can overtake what Quebecers are looking for. If they feel they have a strong candidate that can defend them in caucus and be a voice, maybe one day around the cabinet table, they'll feel strong about that. And if they feel they have enough support, at the provincial level, I think that works for them. What shocks me actually is more the Conservative number and just the expectation that under Pierre Poilievre, the Conservatives would lose. I would hope to think more of a fight would happen. I'm not sure, Fred, if that surprised you, but also just even if you don't have a chance, you want to cut through the vote a bit. You want to make them competitive. You want to try to get through the Bloc and just make it hard for the Liberals. Sure. But it almost like they were able to run away with it, and with a good strategy and a good message. But I think overall it's a good message for the government. And I think the same thing spilled over Beaches, East York. I think a candidate who is local, he's from the Bengali community, well known in those areas. And while I was happy to see, the NDP number, they should be happy to see a stronger amount. Yeah. I think that is still a positive message for the government overall.
That's a big showing for someone who is not nationally well known at all, right?
No. I mean, it adds to a strong 416 caucus. It does. Like people have mentioned the airport. I think the caucus as a whole be a collective voice around that. I think Tinvir can just be a part of that now.
Fred, what do you make of what we saw in Chicoutimi? What is surprising to me here is not that the Conservatives came in third place, because that's what they've been telling me. It's that the vote all went to the Liberal Party. Right. It's not like it split. It seems like most of the Conservative vote went to the Liberals. And if you have Liberals eating the lunch of Conservatives, that seems like a dangerous message.
It's not a good spot to be. Look, obviously, we'll keep hearing about how this was a Richard Martel seat. People have been saying that for the last few months. But if you compare it also to Beaches, we came in a pretty solid second last time. We're trailing in a distant third here. Yeah. Conservatives are down everywhere. That's not where we're supposed to be. We're losing to the Bloc and the NDP. We were losing to the Greens in BC earlier. I think we've come back now in second there. But we are clearly trending down. Yes. You know, everyone would see all the polls. The polls are very bad. They're bad for the leader, for Poilievre. They're bad for the party. And everyone says the only polls that count is the election box. But we're seeing it tonight. It's still not good. We have a big problem in front of us.
Yeah, in Beaches, Conservatives are at about 16% of the vote in the last election, 24%. So
down 7.7.
Yeah. Nathan Cullen, do you want to get in there on what you make of these wins, and I guess particularly in Beaches, where the NDP are back up to double digits, which that will be seen, I think, by many in the NDP as a sign of life, right? Oh, here are some places where we should be doing better, and we are doing better.
That's right. This is effectively tripling the vote share from the last election.
Yep.
That's outstanding, probably exceeding expectations. Some really good issues that, the NDP was putting pressure on those Liberal MPs in Toronto about, which I think is very effective. And it shows that even from outside the House, Avi Lewis can have some effect on what's happening in national affairs. All politics is still local. If it remains, all of these by-elections were national in scope, even though not deterministic on who's holding power. So, the Liberals did very well. I think the NDP's ground game came out, particularly in Beaches, and still waiting to see North Shore, Vancouver, some more numbers. But I too, I don't want to pile on, but for Mr. Poilievre, this isn't a great place to be tonight. You can swipe a number of these results away, but you can also know that it hasn't made his lot any better facing his caucus when the House returns in the fall. He's got to find a new way to talk about the issues that resonates more with Canadians if he wants to remain Prime Minister in waiting.
Okay, Nathan, I'm going to go to Chicoutimi if I can, because the Bloc Québécois leader, who spent a lot of time himself in that riding, fighting for the riding, and many people thought would have a decent chance at it until the trade talks broke down. And to be fair, the Bloc has improved slightly their result in that riding, but the Liberals really ran away with it because of the complete collapse of Conservative support. Let's listen into a little bit of the Bloc leader.
The opponents in this campaign, because democracy speaks, it has rules, and there are some things we like and some things we like less, but it's something we have to accept with good grace. So I'd like to congratulate the opponents.
Il y a déjà sur la scène canadienne deux formations politiques, le Parti libéral du Canada et le Parti conservateur du Canada. Maintenant, et de façon claire, il y a deux formations politiques au Québec, le Parti libéral du Canada et le Bloc québécois.
And the Liberal Party.
On doit cette démonstration à bien des gens dont énormément sont ici.
We owe this demonstration to many, many people, and if you don't mind, and I will invite you to show your appreciation for the incredible work, serious work, and highly sustained work on the part of two members of Parliament, Alexis Giuseppe and Mario.
Mais de façon encore plus soutenue,
but in even a more sustained way, I want to thank Caro and ask her to come up and stand with me here. Thank you all very much.
Okay, there is the Bloc Québécois leader, Yves-François Blanchet, applauding the Bloc candidate who performed well for the Bloc in that riding. It was the comment that the Bloc leader made that made me raise my eyebrows, where he said, this has confirmed that in Quebec there are only two federal parties, the Bloc and the Liberals. He is seeing what has happened to the Conservatives tonight and concluding, as he did, David, that that's it for them. You want to weigh in there before I bring in some BC results?
Some bleu on bleu violence there with Mr. Blanchet taking the opportunity to gloat. Look, that is a bad result for the Conservatives, no question. Down 21 points in vote share right now, a distant third at just 13.1%. But again, we go back to the particular dynamics of Quebec at this particular moment and this particular riding with the loss of Richard Martel to the Senate. A good bit of political stagecraft by the Liberals to appoint the MP to the Senate that couldn't easily be replaced on the Conservative roster. I'm looking ahead a little bit to maybe our next by-election night, Rosie. And this is where I think the test is really going to come in for Mr. Poilievre, and that's going to be when Larry Brock steps down. And Brantford Brant, that riding goes up. This is a riding the Conservatives need to hold in Ontario. If you look at the math and you look at the trends we're seeing in vote share for Conservatives in all the by-elections we've had this year, that's going to be a tough one for them, right? And this is the sort of seat they absolutely must hold if they're going to stay relevant and dominant in Ontario in a meaningful way. And so this is a rough night. There could be some more rough ones ahead.
Yeah, certainly Conservatives were thinking more like 18%, not 13%, certainly not below 15%. So just keep that in mind as you watch those results come from Quebec. And we'll talk to our Quebec panelists in just a moment. Want to bring you up to speed on some more results, though. We'll start out in BC, where things are still in the early moments of those polls reporting, only 6 out of 204. But Braden Cayley, the Liberal candidate there, continues to hold the lead in that riding. Let's go back to Beaches East York, which we have projected as a Liberal win here tonight. And you can see a pretty significant one, especially for a new kid on the block. I hope Tanvir Shanawaz will allow me to call him as the new MP-elect with the NDP in second. Sheehan Desjardins is in Beaches East York, and she's got a guest who I know was out doing a lot of door knocking as well, because I saw it on his Instagram. Sheehan, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I just want to give you a little view. We have Tanvir behind me. Congratulations, Tanvir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. What does this win mean to you?
I mean, there's a lot of gratitude, but then there's a lot of appreciation for what this role will demand out of me, and I'm just looking forward to the opportunity to represent my home.
I'll let you make your rounds. We'll catch up after. Thank you so much.
This guy's going to be great. This guy's already great.
Now we have another guest here with me as well, MP Evan Solomon. Talk to me. What is this moment like? Why was it important for you to be here?
Well, first of all, you saw why. I mean, Tanvir is a phenomenal candidate. Born and raised here. This is the only place he's ever known. And I campaigned with him. And when you knock on doors, he grew up. He knows the schools. He knows the neighborhood. And he knows the issues that people here care about. How to build sustainably. How to grow this community. How to tackle affordability. And he'll raise it up. And, you know, this is a really important riding in the country. These issues matter, and they need a strong voice. But I will also say we are in a unique moment. And everybody watching knows the moment we're in. It's a difficult moment, and we need trusted leadership. Someone that will look at a deal and say, if it's not good for the country, we'll walk away, but we will go back and we'll build together. I think Prime Minister Carney's giving that leadership, and to have someone like Tanvir represent a community and lift that message up for Beaches East York is phenomenal.
So certainly, I mean, you can see the excitement literally right beside us here. So many photos are happening. When he walks out of here, though, what is he up against?
Well, first of all, he walks out here with a lot of support. And the first thing he's got to do, like all of us, after all this is we got to just stay focused and get to work. You know, I will say these are really important elections. We're very happy we won the by-election. Obviously, that really matters. But this is not a political moment in Canada. It's a moment where people are coming together. They're not coming apart. This is a moment where people care about the country. And I think now, whatever happens, Tanvir's won, whatever way people voted, they're Canadians, they're part of the community, they're part of the country. We are all facing a moment where we've got to build, we've got to come together. And I think Tanvir's got to do that. We've got to do that. and just keep going forward. This is a big night. I mean, we had a big win in Chicoutimi. But again, it's about putting politics aside. And I mean, look, we have a good democracy. Democracy matters. This is what we're defending, the right to vote and participate, and then to come together and then work to build together, because everybody knows we're in it. And we've got to come together to get through this, and we will get through this, but we got to do it together.
Then maybe one final question quickly. What does this win, do you think, mean for the Liberal Party? What does this mean for the party in general? What does it say?
You know, foundationally, this is in my view, this is not a super partisan. I mean, I think this is a sign that people are confident that Mr. Carney, the Prime Minister, has got a steady voice. He's calm. He's got a plan. We've got a plan. We are facing a crisis that people want to know. Someone's going to get the details. They're going to go to the table. They're going to do what Canadians do well, take a pragmatic view. We want a good deal, but if it's a bad deal, and in this case the goalpost got moved, we will have the strength to walk away, and then the strength in good faith to come back and make a deal. That's what Canadians want. They don't want a bad deal. They want a good deal because they want to prosper. They want their community to grow. They want affordable housing. They want good health care. All the things we talk about, that's the job. It has, you know what? Tonight's important. The job before tonight, yesterday, and tomorrow is the same job. We just got to build.
Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your night.
My pleasure.
There you have it. We just had a chat there with Evan Solomon, Liberal MP. Quick chat with Tanvir. We'll try and grab him again for a more fulsome chat. He's still making his rounds right now. Lots of photos, lots of excitement in this room.
Hey, Shane, you've already got all our kudos for getting the candidate just once. Well done. Well to push yourself in there to get his reaction right away. And thanks for bringing the minister's response as well. Thanks so much. That's Shane Desjardins there in Toronto. I want to show you, just bring your attention to the small board at the right of your screen, which brings you some pretty important numbers too. And that, of course, is the standing in the House of Commons right now. 172 for the Liberals means that they have the majority, not just the majority of available seats. They have the majority that has been so long sought after. They've kept it. And so now anything else on top of that is gravy, as they say. We'll see what happens in BC, and we'll see what happens with those by-elections, the many that have yet to come, depending on when people leave and when the Prime Minister chooses to call them. Speaking of the Prime Minister, he has responded on social media about these two wins, congratulating Tanvir Chanoaz in BC Beaches, East York, saying Tanvir knows his community, fights for it and delivers. He has also congratulated Daniel Gobet, the next member of Parliament in Quebec. He says he will be a strong voice for rural Quebec and the entire agri-food sector across the country. So some early response there from the Prime Minister as he sees 2 out of 2, waiting again for what will happen in British Columbia, where we just have some early results so far. Let's bring in our Quebec panel for a go-round on what they make of the results and what we should make of them from their perspective. Jonathan Callis, Christina Michaud, Rudy Husney, good to have you all back here. Christina, let's start with you this time. Yves-François Blanchet was out there thanking his candidate right away. Not a terrible showing for the Bloc. It wasn't enough because so much of this Conservative support seemed to flow directly to the Liberals. What do you make of the second place finish for the Bloc tonight?
Well, I have to say I'm quite surprised. I thought it would be a more tight or close race tonight. But like you said, they did well, and I think they're happy with the result that they got. It's more than what they had last election. But it's still frustrating for the Bloc because in the non-Trump era, they would have had Terrebonne, probably would have had Terrebonne. They would have Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord as well. They probably would have more MPs elected last election. General election. So that's all quite frustrating for them. Blanchet said it. There's officially two federal parties in Quebec, the Liberals and the Bloc. But I want to see what's going to happen in Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte, in Laurier-Sainte-Marie, Stephen Guilbeault's riding. That'll probably stay Liberal. But for Saint-Hyacinthe, I looked at the numbers. It's 42% for the Bloc and maybe 35% for the Liberals. So maybe that'll change, because not only Mark Carney strengthened his majority tonight, but he proved his popularity is still high in Canada, but also in Quebec. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Jonathan Kalis, what do you think of the way the Liberals won in Quebec? The fact that so much of that Conservative support flowed directly to Mark Carney, and what do you make of the fact that, as Christina Michaud says, this means that a lot of Quebecers, believe the Prime Minister can stand up for Canada and Quebec at the same time?
I think that's right. I think, excuse me, it's interesting. This is not a natural Liberal riding. There is the urban part around Saguenay/Chicoutimi, but it's a big part of this riding that's rural, which is not normally fertile ground for the Liberals, but the message is resonating everywhere. And Quebec voters, like voters across Canada, and this was true last year too, are concerned about tariffs and trade and Trump and their jobs, and they feel Mark Carney is best equipped. And clearly that hasn't changed in the year and a half since. So I think that's where we're at. Last year we talked about outside of the Montreal area, the races would be Bloc Conservative as opposed to Bloc Liberal in Montreal. That may be stretching. I don't know. We heard murmurings of Conservative Quebec MPs who might want to cross the floor 6 months ago. That died down. I wonder if that starts to creep up. I haven't heard anything, but you have to wonder, do people really feel there's a future, especially in Quebec, for Pierre Poilievre? And lastly, there's a ceiling on separatist voters in Quebec. We see that support for referendum and separation independence is under 30%. Is that really the ceiling? With the PQ has not been able to climb above that. They're now even below 30% in the most recent polls. So that remains a question that we can then extrapolate maybe into the provincial election. What do we look for? Rudy mentioned the poll tomorrow coming out. That'll be one to watch.
Okay, Rudy, let's get your perspective there. I mean, I even felt the Conservatives all go oof when Yves-François Blanchet said there's just two parties left now, the Bloc and the Liberals. I mean, that's hard to hear. And I think Jonathan makes a good point. I wonder whether there are Quebec MPs now, Conservative MPs, who are thinking, yeah, maybe this is trouble for me and I now need to plan an escape hatch.
Yes, I don't think, but we'll see what happens. Look, Mr. Carney made a play. He played and he won. And that's not a typical riding. It's not a good night for the Conservative, 100%. It's not a good night for the Bloc Québécois. Don't forget, they have two riding next to it. Normally, they were also in the mix in the last election. They had two MPs campaigning, Brunel and Mario Simard. So also, it's not a good sign. But look, what's happening is that people are still anxious. They don't know what's happening with the U.S., and they're continuing to give trust to Mr. Carney, especially with what's happening in the news. So I think you don't change a captain, and I think that it's also good news for tonight for Premier Fréchette, the incumbent premier, who's going to play, I guess, the same strategy as Mark Carney is doing right now.
Yep, that's an excellent point. Listen, thank you all for being here. We knew that we needed some additional analysis and smart Quebec voices. Glad that you all took the call. I'm sure we'll all speak again as the Quebec election gets closer to. Jonathan, Christina, and Rudy, thanks you all so much. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to Toronto, where Shane Desjardins would not take no for an answer, only had one question for the candidate and said, no, that's not good enough. I want him back here for a full interview, and has somehow convinced Tanvir Shanawaz to come and talk about his win tonight. Shane Desjardins, over to you.
Yeah, we're back. So we're back here with Tanvir Shanawaz. Congratulations. Thanks for doing round two on this. We appreciate it. So talk to me. We heard a little bit from you earlier, but looking around, there's so many people here, friends, family. What is this moment like?
I mean, this moment feels like a Canadian dream come true. 30 plus years ago, my mom, my dad, and my brother immigrate from Bangladesh, and I'm born later in that year. And we never left the riding, and I just feel like the country that has given us so much, I have now the ability to maybe, give some advocacy back with the riding that has only ever been home to me.
Did you ever think that this moment would come?
It's hard to imagine that it would have come maybe this early in my life, but I think things happen for a reason, and I'm just so grateful for the team, the support system, for the Liberal membership, believing in me and putting us over the edge tonight. But I think that's just a continuation of that representation that, firsthand I was able to help bring to the riding with 11 years with serving alongside Nate. And just those are big shoes that are being left behind to fill, but very galvanized at the moment to continue that legacy going forward.
And that was my next question. You worked alongside him for so long. People that we spoke with said that that's where they met you, was working in his office. What did you learn? What are you going to carry with you?
At the bare minimum, there's a level of customer service that I want to just continue maintaining. There's a lot of federal bureaucracies that many of my neighbors and constituents will look to myself and my team to help continue providing when it comes to navigating federal bureaucracies. But it also means making sure that we continue listening to perspectives and feedback on federal policy, and that those conversations don't stop informing my advocacy up until today. If anything, I'm strengthening that in terms of leveraging relationships I've already built in Ottawa and continuing to do that with a wonderful Toronto caucus where many of us have been here today and hoping to continue, providing wonderful advocacy.
I've been told that you all knocked on 70,000 doors, which that is a big number of doors, but this comes at a tricky time in politics. What is your first order here?
I mean, the first thing will be making sure that we can get sworn in quickly, but standing up a local team, making sure that we remain accessible and present to every corner of this riding, as I was very proud to help play a part in, and then standing up a team in Ottawa that will help us navigate, what hopefully will be a small learning curve in terms of getting adjusted to, caucus committees and the Prime Minister's office and cabinet, and just feeling very galvanized to make sure that I am setting up the best team possible to be available and accessible to my constituents here, and just carrying on advocacy in Ottawa.
Andrew, turn around. Look at all these people that you have behind you, supporting you. All these people. And you have family here with you as well? Family? Your dad is here? I think we'll leave it there. We'll let you make your rounds. But thank you so very much. Yes, thank you for making the rounds again. And there you have it. Just the excitement here kind of keeps going as he makes his rounds. Here, back to you.
Okay, Sheen Desjardins, again, our kudos for grabbing the winner. That's not always easy to do. It's certainly not easy to do twice, but you did it. Thank you for all your help there tonight in Beaches, East York. Okay, let's give everyone a sense of where things stand on the West Coast. That's the one place where we haven't yet been able to make a projection, and that's because things are still early in terms of the votes reporting. But Braden Cayley still is leading in North Vancouver Capilano by almost 500 votes there. Conservatives are in second place now, which has shifted pretty considerably since the start. And look who's in third, the Green Party, ahead of the NDP in BC. Again, we're at 17 of 204 polls reporting, about 7% of the polls. So nothing is decided here yet, but that'll be interesting to watch, whether there is indeed, first a fight between the NDP and the Greens, as those lines would seem to be suggesting, and whether the Conservatives can maintain their spot in second place, which is where they finished in the last election as well. So we're still watching there to make a projection, the decision desk, and we will do that as soon as we are comfortable with where the vote shares are tracking. Let's go back to Quebec, where the CBC's Sarah Levitt is in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord and has a guest. Sarah.
Rosie, when I talked about party hopping, what I meant was pub hopping here in Saguenay, because I am now at the Liberal headquarters. Obviously a very different vibe here. Very excited because of these results. And I'm here with Greg Fergus, MP for Hull-Aylmer. Tell me, what do you think this means? Why did the Liberals win here?
I think for two reasons. One, clearly, Mark Carney is being really appreciated by Quebecers. But secondly, and I think this is the most important part here in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, Daniel Gobey is really a household name. He's a man who's worked with the Union of Dairy Producers in Quebec, president of the association for a long time. Really, he's an authentic guy. And if there's one thing I learned in door knocking in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, as well as in Hull-Aylmer, is that people really appreciate having somebody who's authentic and knows their place, knows their region, and is really from this area. And Danielle was just an exceptional candidate.
You know, we did hear often that this was sort of a gamble on Mark Carney's part. It was him that led to this this riding having a vacancy, nominating Richard Martel to the Senate. And then, of course, we're seeing these trade negotiations now talks off with the U.S. Trade here, obviously very important. Do you think that this is just another kind of nod to what Carney is doing in terms of how he's dealing with the U.S.?
Well, I think the people in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord has two particular big industries which are directly affected by these totally unjustified and unfair tariffs by the U.S. government, the U.S. administration. First of all, it's the aluminum sector, which is, we make great, clean aluminum here, which the Americans need. And for them to put on these unjustified tariffs is not helpful. Second reason is on the whole question of the supply management system. And Danielle, of course, being the head of the dairy producers of Quebec, knows this like the back of his hand. And he can really add a lot to the entire context for us and for what Canada is trying to defend and promote.
Thank you very much for that. So that's Greg Fergus, obviously the MP for Hull-Elmer. There's a number of MPs here tonight. We have right over here Anthony Housefather. There's several others. The vibe here, as I said, lots of excitement. Happy to take this, just another win for the Liberals in an election in this by-election that was seemed to be heading into the polls, really a tight race between the Bloc and the Liberals.
Okay, Sarah Levitt, way to party hop for us tonight. It's a good thing. Chicoutimi is not that big. I mean, it's big, but all the pubs are concentrated, so it's good that you're able to get around. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. We will come back to you as the night wraps up. Let's go back to North Vancouver, Capilano, take a look at what is happening there, because that is the riding, the third by-election that we have yet to call at this stage. Braden Cayley, the Liberal candidate, leading by almost 600 votes at this stage, with 20 out of 204 polls reporting. So we'll keep our eye on how that starts to unfold and when we're confident to make a projection. What's interesting there, I think, is where everybody else's vote is going. I don't know if we have a vote share for North Vancouver, Capilano. I think we do, because we showed it earlier. Yeah. So you can start to see not only the Liberals pulling away, but what's happening to the two parties at the bottom there, third and fourth place, the Liberals and the Greens. And that's going to be interesting to watch over the next number of minutes as the vote count continues. Let's go to John Hernandez, who's in North Vancouver, Capilano. And John, I think you have a guest as well.
Yes, Rosemary. I'm here with Jill McKnight, the MP for Delta, also Associate Minister for National Defense and Minister of Veterans Affairs. Jill, walk me through how you're feeling right now. Now, two ridings have been projected to be Liberal victories. We're seeing the numbers come in for this riding as well. It looks promising. What's going on through your mind, and how is everybody feeling?
You know what, there's an incredible energy in the room right now. The volunteers that have been working so hard, we've come together. The feedback we've been receiving in the community has been excellent. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm tonight.
What do you attribute the results that we're seeing right now to?
You know what, at the doors, what Canadians were telling us is that they see us on the right path right now. They see the leadership that the Prime Minister is showing. They see the work that we're doing, and they are behind us.
For sure. Here in BC, we heard from the Premier calling for, Ottawa to go a bit further when it comes to fighting back against the U.S. As Associate Minister of Defense, there was discussions over the purchase of fighter jets from the U.S. Tell me, what is Ottawa's commitment on that front?
We are committed to buying the right product for Canadians to meet the needs of Canadian security and sovereignty. That is our focus, and that's what we will be moving forward with when the time comes.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. Where do you see things going now? We're seeing the numbers come in. Are you confident that, we'll see Braden Cayley as projected as a winner here in this riding, just given how we're seeing about 55% or so of the votes in favor of him?
I think what I heard on the doors was there's a lot of Canadians that are behind Braden. I think he's going to be an excellent representative for the North Vancouver-Capilano riding, and I know he's very committed to being a strong voice for this area and for the industries of this area. So I feel very optimistic, and I'm very supportive of Braden.
That's Joe McKnight, the MP for Delta, Minister of Veteran Affairs as well. Rosemary.
John Hernandez, I appreciate you trying to get an answer about the fighter jets, an answer we are still not able to get in Ottawa, but you never know. That was good of you to try. Thank you for that, John. We'll come back to you as we get closer, hopefully, to a result in North Vancouver-Capilano. I know David wants to talk about something in a moment. As soon as they tell me it's good to go for the boards, we'll do that. Just wanted to get a quick go-around, though, with our friends here at the table. I wanted to go back to something that Evan Solomon actually said, and I wanted to ask whether you think there's any risk in it. He seemed to be presenting the wins tonight as sort of the only thing that you can do, right? It's the show of national unity to vote for the Prime Minister and the Liberals in the face of Donald Trump. And then he went on about how great our democracy is. But a great democracy is when you feel confident in voting for any party, right? To show the strength. And I just wonder if you position these choices as this is the only thing, right, in the face of Donald Trump, and any other choice, any other party is not standing together in the face of Donald Trump, whether there's some risk in that. Obviously not tonight, but going forward, you know, as things get more complicated or as the polls shift. I don't know, Fred, I mean, you think I think there's something there that seems to me, you know, challenging.
Prime Minister Carney, I think, has done a very good job with his brand of being that adult in the room who can manage the situation. That's what he's projected, and that's what a lot of Canadians believe he's doing. But when you go a little bit too partisan there, when you say we're the only ones who can do this, you do have that risk of causing
and I guess I mentioned it because when we're talking about, oh my gosh, you know, what do other parties do now if they're going to take all three of these ridings? Where is the space for them? It seems to me, Nathan, that there is some space. It's just not being used potentially at this point.
Well, we just had a trade deal collapse, and Evan is trying to frame this interestingly. It reminds me a little bit of when separation was a big issue in Quebec, and Liberals said the only way to maintain Canada is you have to vote Liberal, and then they started the sponsorship scandal. So let's keep the hubris down a little bit. I think your point is well taken, that voting for another party, even when threatened from an outside force, is of course good. Canadians do that all the time. Right. No one wears an open collar better than Evan Solomon, though. Let's put that question to rest. Guy looks good. The split, what the Bloc leader said, very interesting, right? Yeah. He's going to try to frame this as two parties in Quebec. Yeah. That's the question. Yeah. I'm looking at beaches and other places, and beaches tonight. The losing Liberal vote didn't go Conservative, went NDP. Yeah. Tripling the NDP percentage from a disastrous result last time, good ground game, etc. That's where the NDP is going to pick up the message of work with the government when you can, when it's important, and then also be critical when they're not doing things that they promised to do, which Mr. Carney's had a few of those occasions as well.
Sure, which is sort of what the Bloc strategy is too, which Christine Michaud talked about as well. Vandana, do you see what I'm trying to get at here? That it is not, that it's fine. Obviously, you know, the Liberals have won 2 out of 3 tonight. There's no danger in it. But if you start presenting a test of democracy about Donald Trump, and the only option is this. You know, a test of democracy is actually that everybody votes for whoever they want, not that you have to vote for one way or another.
People hate liberal arrogance. It's like the one thing that'll shoot ourselves in the foot. Yeah. So, I mean, what Fred has
you said that word. I did not. I was just presenting something that was said.
I will say that, to Fred's point, Prime Minister Carney has showed himself to be the only adult in the room. That's his branding. I don't think he's gone that way. I actually hope. I don't think Minister Solomon meant to say that. I think in the high of the night, like I'm sure he spoke that way. But what we have to, I think. Tariffs and the threat of our sovereignty, democracy is like standing on the backside of all this, right? Yes, which is helping, you know, we have a suburban Vancouver riding, we talked about a rural Quebec riding and a downtown Toronto riding. But I think it has to be clear that I think Canadians just generally feel confident in Mark Carney's abilities. And I talk to people at work or at my family, and they just trust him for whatever reason. You know, and yes, there's issues on affordability, on housing, on a number of issues that doesn't solely rest on the federal government, but they feel like he has the ability to change this country around, change his economy around, and make Canada more sustainable economically. So I think that's, and I caution MPs, like seeing what's happened as Fred referred on to like the conservative side of things, to not go on those kind of angles on social media, because then people, the goodwill we've built across the country, it's not going to work well.
That's right. Okay, David, you wanted to take a look at some of the vote share and some of the patterns that you're seeing.
Yeah, there's a remarkable trend across all three ridings based on the results we have right now. These aren't complete, but let's start with Chicoutimi-Lefort, where we know that the Liberals have won that seat. But just look at the vote share here. The Liberals are at 50.1%. They got 31% in the general election, so they're up 19 points there. The Conservatives way down 21.2%. But right there, in what we thought was going to be the toughest race for the Liberals, they are at half of the vote with 85% of the polls reporting. And then you go to Beaches East York, similar story. The Liberal vote is down there, down 13 points from the nearly 68% that Nate Erskine-Smith got in 2025, but they're still at 54.7%. When have you ever seen somebody lose double-digit points in vote share and still have a clear majority of the vote, not just a plurality? Right. And Nathan's been down-talking the NDP all night. They didn't triple their vote share. They almost quadrupled their vote share, Nathan, from 6.8 to 25.6. But again, in the first two, which we have called, the Liberals are over 50% of the vote. Same thing here in North Vancouver, Capilano. Down slightly from 59.8%, which Jonathan Wilkinson got in 2025, but still early. They're only 20 of 204 polls reporting, but just shy of 57%. So here you have a government in the middle of a trade war with this existential threat from the United States in Western Canada, in Central Canada, and in northern rural Quebec, at 50% of the vote in all three of those ridings. I mean, that is not the sort of thing you normally see on a by-election night. No. It speaks maybe to the moment we're in, but also I think it speaks to the weaknesses of the alternatives, right? The challenges they're all facing at different times. The NDP trying to rebuild, the Bloc Québécois facing the challenge of dealing with Donald Trump with a strong federalist option, and the Conservatives in this, after having this Icarus moment of being so close to victory, the wax melting, the wings falling off at the crash and burn of the party, of finding a way forward and to stay competitive. Because where they're doing best right now is second place in the Vancouver North Capilano at about 28.9% of the vote. Again, early, but again, down 5 percentage points there. That is the best showing of the night right now, a 5 percentage point drop. Those are rough numbers. When Justin Trudeau had numbers like that in a by-election, MPs started, writing letters, not really signing them, but sort of saying they'd signed them.
I mean, part of the issue here, and sorry, I'm gonna do this first, or Tyler will yell at me. This is the Liberal MP elect entering here in Chicoutimi, Daniel Gabay, arriving at the pub where they are celebrating tonight a significant win for the Liberals. And there's Joel Lightbound, of course, a minister in Quebec, who's up there. There were a lot of Quebec ministers out there trying to help Daniel Gabay.
des Bleuets du Saguenay à rapporter à Ottawa en disant qu'il allait tout faire pour qu'on en rapporte plus le 31 août. Ben, grâce à son travail, grâce à votre travail, grâce à la confiance des gens de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, c'est chose faite. Votre futur, votre nouveau député de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, Daniel Gabay!
A lot of excitement there in Chicoutimi. I mean, this is an example not only of, a riding concerned about Donald Trump, but of a Liberal Party making a very smart choice of a candidate in someone who represents or has represented in the past dairy farmers at a time when supply management, was at least discussed around the table and didn't think it was up for grabs, but there may have been changes to some of the quotas.
Vous envoyez ce soir un message fort
Un message fort pour Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, oui.
He says that they are sending a strong message for
Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, and a strong message for Quebec and Canada. This victory means we can maintain Canadian unity all across the country. And of course, the voice of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean will now be at the decision-making table. You know, our region is the one most severely affected in terms of aluminum and the lumber sectors. So many families here have decided to change the economy of Quebec and Canada. And together with Mark Carney and Quebec MPs in the Liberal Party, we will make a significant positive change in Quebec's economy. You know, Mr. Carney appointed me, and that was a great privilege. We spoke a few minutes ago, and he wanted to hear the voice of this region. He wanted to hear the voices of people in the regions, to reassure them. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. And people in all the communities around Chicoutimi, in the Lac-Saint-Jean region, all of them, we are a proud people, and we're going to make changes. When I saw Mark Carney's program, it was obvious for me. It was obvious that the Liberal plan would work for Chicoutimi, and it will allow us to have a more independent, resilient, and strong economy here in the region. We want to build big projects, major projects, and build strong communities. And there's nothing like this region to know what a strong community is. No, we will be there. We'll be there to develop new housing, to work in the defense sector, in Grand-Anse, and of course to take care of people. Aluminum, the aluminum sector, the lumber sector. We will also be the voice for supply management in Canada. We're going to have a strong people, and that means involving all the agricultural players in the region and across Canada. I have a friend right next to me, Joël. Joël, who represents Quebec City. And I want to thank you, Joël. I want to thank you for your confidence in me. Not only Joël, I have 44 Quebec MPs around me to support me. We are the voice of Quebec, a strong voice for a strong Canada. Thank you, friends. Of course, we have to thank our opponents. They ran a good campaign, and this has been the greatest experience in my life in this by-election. I'm very happy, but I want to congratulate Ms. Dubé. She ran a very respectful campaign with good ideas, and it makes us better. And it pushes us to be better. And it has allowed us to work up until now to ensure that we would receive this victory. I also want to thank all the other political parties and congratulate them for their campaigns. And I want to congratulate them for their commitment to democracy and their dedication in recent months. Well, just to close, I want to thank my close friends and all the volunteers and the families. Well, you know, this is an adventure. And, you know, people believed in me. They were behind me. And thank you, friends, for that support. In terms of people who were working hard for me during the campaign, Fred, Angelo, Loïc, where are you? A lot of the families were great supporters. And of course, my team. Isabelle, where is Isabelle? Thank you, Isabelle. Carole, Hélène, Carole, thank you so much. They are the women that provided balance during this period. And the necessary resources, and of course my family, my partner, Patricia.
C'est pas facile, ma chérie, mais j'ai toujours aimé représenter et défendre.
I always enjoyed being a representative, but the thing is, you have to believe in a cause, and you have to work hard. And thank you, my darling, for your support. And of course, the children. Xavier.
Okay, there you go. A very excited newly MP-elect in Chicoutimi-Les-Fjords, who says that he spoke to the Prime Minister moments ago. He's losing his voice, so we'll see. I'm not sure how long that conversation could have lasted. I'm told the Prime Minister also spoke to his other new MP-elect in Beaches, East York. So perhaps the Prime Minister will stay up long enough to see what happens in North Vancouver, Capilano, which is where we will go next. John Hernandez is there with an MP who's also waiting for the results. So far, the Liberals are in the lead, but we're not ready yet to make a projection. John, who do you have there to talk to?
Yeah, I've got the longest-serving female MP, Hetty Fry, Member of Parliament for Vancouver Centre, who actually knows the candidate, Braden Cayley, quite well. Hetty, please tell me a little bit about your history with Braden Cayley.
Well, Braden, when he was a young man, he was a really keen and eager young man. In 2006, he came knocking on doors with me, and I remember him running to my office and saying, Stephen Harper is coming to town. Can we get Hetty Fry's hands and put them all along the boulevard as he comes up to the hotel? And my communications head looked at him and said, Braden, that's adolescent. We don't do that kind of thing here. And Braden has grown, always been there, always solid, always ready to support the Liberal Party. I am so happy for him tonight because I'll tell you, he's winning. There's a gap is too great for him to lose now.
You're pretty confident.
I'm pretty confident, and he deserves to. Yeah.
What do you think he'll bring to this constituency?
What he will bring here is, a knowledge of British Columbia, of the culture, the needs, the way British Columbians think, the way we feel, the way we look at Ottawa. He's not an Ottawa boy who was parachuted. He's a BC boy who went to Ottawa for a job a few years ago. But what Braden is going to bring is the influence he has in Ottawa, the time he spent there working with the Prime Minister. He's going to bring that experience, that expertise, and that influence. He's got the air. He knows how to go and get things done. So he's going to be an influencer in British Columbia. Is going to benefit greatly by Britain winning this election.
I believe you used the term whippersnapper to describe him.
We had to smack him around a lot now and then, yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, safe to say you think he's going to come through and then lead this run?
I think he will come through, and he will come through with flying colours, and he deserves it. He's grown, he's got so much expertise. Do you remember when he worked for the mayor of Vancouver for about 8 years in City Hall? He knows this province, he knows this city. And Vancouver, North Vancouver, the lower mainland, he knows it.
I mean, obviously a lot of unique challenges. Things have changed since then now. We have this sort of the trade war, you know, looming over a lot of voters right now. Do you think that really played into the result we're seeing so far?
I think it has. All the polling is showing that it has. But what I think nobody's talking about is the fact that the United States is getting a message tonight. Our leader has the support of the Canadian people. We won 3 by-elections, and look at you guys, you're failing in the polls. Canadians have come together, we're strong, we're united, we're ready to take on any challenge. We're Canadian, we're always ready to take on any challenge. We've shown that in Juno Beach, on D-Day, when Canadians were the only ones who were able to get in 8 miles into France when everybody was dropping on the beaches. Because we bring courage and we bring innovation to whatever we do as Canadians. That's our strength. And tonight, this is a strong message to the United States administration.
There you go. Hedy Fry, probably one of the most passionate people in this room right now, really filling up as we're seeing the numbers come in. Rosemary.
Okay, John Hernandez, that was some classic Hedy Fry there. Also the Hedy Fry decision desk, because we haven't called it yet, but we haven't projected it yet. But she's very confident in Braden Cayley's abilities. Not surprising, given her enthusiasm still for the job and for what she does. But we have not yet called it in North Vancouver, Capilano. Maybe I can just give you a sense of where the results are at. I should tell you that this was the riding with the highest number of advanced polling ballots. I mean, that wasn't a huge number compared to a general election, but it still had the most advanced ballots cast. And we were told, we have been told recently that they hadn't started they did not start counting those in advance, which was the case in some of the other ridings. So you might suddenly see a big dump of numbers is what I'm saying. And we might be able to make a projection quickly after that. Okay, let's bring everybody in here as we hopefully wind our way to a last result out in British Columbia. This country is big. There's a lot of time zones, and
yes.
Nathan Cullen's the only one who's still awake, and that's
that was the political analysis.
Yeah, that was it.
This country's big.
This country's big, and it's getting late.
Hedy Fry needs to be on your decision desk for sure.
I want to talk about the very smart analysis that David did there about the fact that it's 50% in all 3 and maybe a projected win at some point for the Liberals in North Vancouver, Capilano. But then also that who's coming in second in each riding is also different, which shows you that there is some challenges there for the opposition parties. Nathan, why don't we start with you on what that tells you, that the way that number has broken down right across the country in a similar way?
Yeah, I mean, I always think of our big elections in our big country as being a series of regional elections that have maybe some themes going through them, but the layout in Atlantic Canada is so different than they do on the West Coast and everything in between. So again, we're here now. I hope to God, not for political reasons, but for our country's sake, that we're not in the same position come the next general, that we're sitting with no trade pact with the U.S., with constant tariff threats and constant insults. While that might be good for incumbents who Canadians then reach to, maybe, I think the question's going to be a different one, Rosie, when we get to the next one. It isn't, can you hold him back, Mr. Trump? And Mr. Carney is well suited so far in voters' minds to do that. It's been 3 years now. We've seen the effect of the tariffs. And I can't help as a British Columbian, all of this, watching what's happened with the British Columbian softwood lumber industry over decades of U.S. tariffs to the rest of the Canadian economy. Like, This is painful. This is destructive. The Americans are serious about this. And Mr. Carney's going to have to be able to land somewhere else than where we are right now and hopefully have something a lot more productive than what we have today. Not blaming him for it. I'm just saying the question's going to be different.
Sure, of course it will. Okay, and I'm only trying to cut you off because the decision desk, not the Hetty Fry one, the CBC decision desk is ready to make a projection. Okay, and at this moment, the CBC News Decision Desk is projecting that Braden Cayley will hold this riding for the Liberal Party, winning it with more than 2,000 votes. Close to 3,000. Sometimes my eyesight tricks me. The Conservatives are coming in second. An interesting breakdown here as well tonight. The Green Party coming in at this stage anyway, third, with the NDP in fourth. But Braden Cayley is the winner tonight, a first-time MP-elect as well, with first-time MPs right across the board for the Liberals. Someone well-known in Ottawa, well-known to the Prime Minister. I'm told he's making his way to the venue. He had an awful lot of help there from former colleagues and ministers who had worked hard with him. Door knocking, but he is taking that tonight with more than 57% of the vote, getting Braden Cayley and the Liberals a hold there in the riding of North Vancouver-Capilano. I think I can see Gregor Robertson, because he's a very tall minister, speaking, so I'll let maybe dip in for a moment to hear what he's saying.
Braden Cayley is someone who has been in public service for decades, believe it or not, decades. And those of us who've known Braden for many, many years know his commitment to Canada, to BC, to Vancouver. It's unbelievable. He joined me at City Hall 15 years ago, and he has not stopped in his political trajectory. I don't think any of us that have worked with Braden are surprised that he will be the new Member of Parliament for North Vancouver-Capilano. All right, so I know North Vancouver-Capilano is ready to give a warm welcome to our newest Member of Parliament, Braden Cayley. Come on down.
All right. Wow. Thank you, North Vancouver-Capilano. Merci beaucoup à tous. Thank you, Jack Lonsdales. What a night and what a room. Thank you so much. And Gregor, thank you for that generous introduction, your friendship and your service to community and country, both throughout your life and today. Really appreciate it. And as Gregor mentioned, we're gathered on the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations, nations who have cared for these lands and waters since time immemorial. Thank you for the warm welcome you've given this campaign. Let's give them a thanks for that welcome. And before I go further, please join me in thanking both the MP who served this riding for the past 10 years and the constituency office staff who have continued serving this community over the past 2 months. To Jonathan Wilkinson and his team, a very big thank you. To all of North Vancouver-Capilano, thank you so very much. I understand, was just told this might be the strongest Liberal by-election result in over 100 years in BC. So it's nice to make some British Columbia history And tonight you've given me the greatest honor of my life, the chance to serve this community and the province we are so proud to call home, the country we love. And I accept it with a full heart and clear eyes and keen responsibility. This place in our nation's parliament belongs to you. I will hold it in trust and spend every day working to earn the trust you've placed in me. Thank you. To everyone who cast a ballot, whether for me or for someone else, thank you for doing that. Democracy asks us to disagree without ceasing to belong to one another. From now on, there's no our voters and their voters on any list. There's only the people of North Vancouver Capilano, and my duty will be to all of you. To Stephen Curran, Shelley Luce, Stephen Tweedale, and every candidate, thank you. Let's give a big round of applause for all the candidates. It is no small thing to ask a community to judge you out loud, and your volunteers walked the same mountainside hills that ours did, likely came across a few of the same bears that ours did, and deserve our respect and gratitude. So thank you. And thank you as well to the Elections Canada staff and poll workers who made this democratic process possible here in North Vancouver Capilano and in 2 ridings across the country. And congratulations to our 2 new Liberals MPs in Chicoutimi and in Beaches East York today. Yes. Trifecta, Gregor says. I like that. And to the extraordinary people who built this campaign, this victory is yours. You knocked through long days, made calls.
Okay, and that is Braden Cayley, the new MP-elect for the riding of North Vancouver Capilano out in British Columbia. That's the 3rd by-election call for us, projection for us tonight. The Liberals have swept all 3, certainly expected to hold 2, but also took that riding in Quebec right away from the Conservatives and had a decisive and definitive win there too. That, of course, means if you look at the side of your screen, on the right-hand side of your screen, that the Liberals now have 173 seats in the House of Commons. A small majority, but they have lots more opportunity in the weeks and months ahead, as we expect 5 to 6 other MPs to step aside, and the Prime Minister will be able to choose the timing of those by-elections. And we'll see how some of that unfolds as well. He might be able to make a couple of pickups there. Going to end things tonight with the panel to get their perspective from everybody about what you saw here tonight, what you thought, what message I guess the government or the other parties should take. Vonda, and I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good day for the government. A pickup is always good. And I think just the diversity of those ridings and the people and the issues within each of those, provinces shows, the momentum behind the Prime Minister at this moment right now. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's something they shouldn't squander. I think the question is, what happens with the opposition, right? And I think, there's a lot of, I'm sure Fred will go into it, but I'm sure there's a lot of soul searching that's going to happen to that. But it's definitely a message from Canadians.
What do you think, Fred?
I think the by-elections of last Parliament were way more fun to watch. These are terrible.
That's about as astute as me saying the country is big.
No, it's last spring, the Liberals got their majority through by-elections, and now here we are, they're sweeping, and we have 4 more by-elections to go this fall. And one of them is what should be a safe Conservative seat, Brantford-Brant, but people are all talking as if this could be up for grabs. No one should be talking about a seat like that up for grabs. That is a big problem for the Conservative movement. That needs to be won by us and won handedly. It's not even a slim win is good enough. We need to win that handily and show that we have some kind of plan or some path to actually be a strong opposition and government in waiting. As we said last night, or earlier tonight, feels like last night, 3 different parties came in second.
Yeah.
Where are we as a Conservative movement, as the official opposition, that we can actually win? We're not showing that we're in the right direction at all, because we're not on the right path.
Nathan, NDP did well in Beaches, not as well as I would have thought in BC. So the Greens right now ahead of the NDP. But give me your sense of the messages there you think for the evening.
Yeah, a good campaign for Abby. There was and for the NDP, really focused in on beaches. The Greens presented a really strong candidate in Shelley Luce on the North Shore. And I'm glad we got another member of the Bald Brotherhood into the House of Commons. This is important, an underrepresented group that has often been ignored in our politics. And I know David shares my feelings, but it was...
he just walked over my analysis entirely. That was all I was going to say. Representation matters, though.
We're at the point in the evening where no one is saying anything useful anymore.
You say that as someone with hair.
Very interesting. It'll be overanalyzed. They're by-elections. Congratulations to the candidates and their teams. This is a wonderful night for them and their families.
Okay, David.
Well, look, you're going to look at the scoreboard on the bottom of the screen. You look at the party standings. You see 173 Liberal seats, and people will be tempted to say this is a slim majority. And while that is technically true in a parliamentary sense, it's hard not to look at these results, the polling, and the trend lines, and just realize that Mark Carney and his Liberal Party are in a dominant political position right now. That if there was a general election, for whatever reason, you're looking at a massive surge in seats. I just want to show you, again, the numbers in Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord, because we have 211 of 212 polls reporting. Now, they are at 51.4% of the vote share, the Liberals are. That's up 20 points from last time. 15,982 votes in a by-election is more votes than the Liberals got in the general election in 2025. It's shy of what the Conservatives won it with 17,300 votes, but that is something. To have a turnout like that, to get a 51% vote share and just nominally exceed your vote from the general election in a by-election where everything is lower, they did not have that.
Well, and also where the issue set was this, at least partly the same. Where trade was part of the issue set, and this time they couldn't. The Conservatives couldn't convince them not to that riding not to vote Liberal.
But it's kind of trade was the issue set, sovereignty was the issue set, the 51st state, all of these things were an issue set, and people were adjusting to new leaders. They've adjusted, and they decided tonight in a big way.
Okay, thank you for that. Vandana Khatter, Fred Delury, Nathan Cullen, David Cochrane, thank you all for being here. Of course, lots of good analysis and lots of fun to be with you here tonight. Our reporters on the ground, fantastic job. Sarah Levitt, Sheehan Desjardins, John Hernandez. Wonderful of them to all be out late tonight to get reaction on the ground from the people supporting the candidates and others. Really appreciate that, an important part of the story. Of course, this is just sort of the beginning of the political season, if you will. Summer's coming to an end, and things are busy, and this is at least one sign of what voters, what you have chosen, and the direction in these three ridings at least you want to see the country going. The Liberals end the night with 173, as David said, a slim majority, but if you look at how everyone else performed, a very strong political mandate to move forward with what they have put on the table. I'm Rosemary Barton. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to the team, the crew, and all the smart people talking to me in my ear through the night. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here very soon. Bye-bye.